Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu
Walaikum
alaikum.
assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. So we've, mashallah, now entered into episode 43 of the Open Forum. For brothers and sisters who are not aware of this particular stream, this is predominantly for non-Muslims. And it is in relation to generally, because we normally do the historicity stream on a Sunday, or we do the Old Testament prophecies. We were unable to do that because Ijaz couldn't, unfortunately, make it today. Again, please do pray for his family member who's unwell, and also for him as well. That Allah give them all, inshallah, shifa very soon. But yeah, so predominantly it's for Christians, but it's an open forum, so atheists, agnostics, people from other religions can come on as well, and inshallah discuss whatever it is they want to discuss. Brothers and sisters, this is not really for Muslims, this particular stream. We do have Dawah Clinic, and we do have also Doubtbuster, sorry, which is actually for Muslims, but this particular one is not. But these streams generally tend to get very, very full as the stream goes along. So if you do have a question you want to ask, or you'd like to talk about something, then please do come on sooner rather than later. Otherwise, as I say, I've always said this, it's very difficult to get you on at the end because there are so many people waiting. Brother Arfan, how are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, I'm well, and I'm happy to be on tonight.
Alhamdulillah.
Excited
Yes.
for what's expecting us, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. And Dr. Imran? You're muted.
Alaikum, alhamdulillah. How are you guys? You well?
Alhamdulillah. So some people have already noticed my husky voice. I am sort of going through a bit of a man flu, cold, whatever you want to talk about it, however you want to talk about it, I'll say it. Yeah, it doesn't seem to go away. It gets better, then it gets worse, then it gets better, then it gets worse. But it's just one of those things, inshallah. But hopefully we'll get through the stream. So we've already got a couple of people backstage. Thank you for having your cameras on. Karl, if you can just give me a thumbs up quickly. Karl, can you give me a thumbs up? And then a quick wave. Quick wave. Thank you, Karl. Okay, so we're going to get you on next, Karl. We're going to get you on next. You can either have your camera on or you can turn it off, whatever basically you're comfortable with. So welcome to the stream, Karl. We're struggling with your sound, Karl, for some reason.
What?
Yeah, it's breaking up a lot and it's not very clear. Yeah, Karl, what I'm going to do is just remove you from the stream because it's just sort of cracking up and it's breaking up. It's not very clear. Maybe if you step out of the platform and come back in again, we'll try to get you back on again. Mahesh, just give me a quick thumbs up again. Lovely. All right, you're on next, and you can have your camera off if you want to. Hi, Mahesh. Welcome to the stream.
Hey, hi guys. As always, it's great to see you guys. Abbas, hope you get well soon.
Thank you.
And yeah, so today I wanted to discuss with you about morality. So in one of our previous conversations, you guys mentioned that you believe in objective morality. My personal opinion is that morality is subjective, but I wanted to understand from you, why do you think that morality is objective? And the second question I had was about God's omniproperties, but we can discuss that later. But before we do that, I just quickly wanted to follow up on the discussion that we had last time about the fine-tuning argument. So
Mahesh, Mahesh, you've already discussed 2 points. Now you want to go back to the first point that we discussed. Let's get cracking. Let's start dealing with morality. Can it ever be objective? Okay. And I'd like Dr. Imran to start with that, inshallah, and then we'll allow Brother Arfan to come in there straight after. And then we can possibly, if we have time, because we've already got 2 or 3 people waiting in the backstage as well, despite yourself. So we want to try to get something. But yeah, let's get Dr. Imran to start with. Doctor, can morality ever be objective, or is it always subjective?
So I don't understand. So I'm going to slightly change my tack a little bit, because I think we found our previous conversations don't very get anywhere. at all. We just tend to go around in circles. So, Mahesh, you've made a claim. You've said that morality is subjective.
Yeah.
Please explain why you believe this.
I mean, let's say an incident happens, okay, and let's say a man kills another man, right? So like people who are observing that incident, they may not have like a full context of what's happening, and even if they have full context of what has happened, people may argue that whether one person can say that that one person killed the other in as a self defense, or the other person can say that no, it was not a self defense, but the other person first tried to attack the first person, and that's why he as a reaction attack on the second person. So people can have like these different opinions. So sometimes to make like an objective judgment about what happened in that particular situation is like very very hard. And and that's why I feel that in many cases arriving to an objective conclusion about what happened is very hard. So
Yeah, so Mahesh, you haven't presented anything that tells me that morality is subjective. What you've done is you've explained why something needs to be looked at in detail to determine culpability for any crime. So the question is, why are you looking at the person being who had murdered somebody else? Why are you looking at them in the first place?
I mean, that's how we do it, right? So
no, that's not. No, you're misunderstanding the question. I'm not talking about the way you would go about trying somebody for a crime. I'm asking you, why are we looking at the person who murdered somebody in the first place? What's the reason for holding this person to account? Why is that?
Because killing a person is wrong.
Okay, are you sure?
Based on my subjective understanding, yes. So based on my subjective
morality. Mahesh, we're not talking about, because if it's going to be your personal opinion, then I don't have an issue with your personal opinion. You can go and have a nice day, have a cup of tea, have your personal opinion. I'm not interested in your personal opinion.
Yeah, but
one second, let me just complete my sentence. If you actually want to make a point, if you want to say that my position is the correct way of thinking about something, which is what you seem to be wanting to do, then I need you to give me something about according to my subjective opinion. That's not good enough. I'm not accepting your personal opinion. I want a good reason why you think that what you've said, that this person has been killed, and then straight away you said that some people think it might be. So give me a reason why this is subjective, please.
The reason why I'm saying that this is subjective is because, like, we all agree that killing an innocent is wrong. We all agree on that.
Are you sure about that?
Based on like our collective subjective understanding, we can say that.
So so when as soon as you put the word subjective in there, brother, right, Mahesh, I'm being kind with you now. As soon as you put according to our subjective understanding, what you're saying is that it can also be okay. So this is why I'm asking you. This is why I'm asking you the question very carefully. When you say to me that we all know, you said we all know collectively that this is wrong, and then I say to you, are you sure about this? And then you you use the word subjectively.
Yeah, so that is why
subjectively means that it can be right and it may be wrong.
Yeah, so this is why
I want you to put your mast in the sand and say, this is my mast. It says that killing somebody can sometimes be fine. Murdering somebody, so killing is another. Murdering somebody can sometimes be fine.
Yeah,
and I want you to present this.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So in some cases, like killing someone can be fine if the person is let's say a terrorist, or he has done some harm, and it's hard to apprehend him and kind of contain him. So in that case, many times we like even the law enforcement sometimes have to like kill the other person. So in that case, I think it's fine. If it is harming the society in any which way, then I think in that case it's fine. So
Mahesh, with all respect, Mahesh, again, you've gone into the process of law. So you're giving all of the reasons why a killing of another person may be justified.
Yeah.
Okay, you're saying that self-defense, you're saying that to prevent harm to other people, someone is but these are the reasons you're giving. You're not actually talking about the problem.
Yeah.
So the problem is you're saying that a moral judgment upon the act of murder So here we're assuming unjustified killing of an innocent, murder, right? We're not talking about all of the exceptions that you can bring. Oh, he was trying to rape somebody, he was trying to kill somebody, he was trying to blow up the city. These are all obfuscations that you're making, smoke and mirrors. Killing of an innocent person.
It's wrong. Yeah.
Now, the question I'm asking you, I agree with you, it's wrong. We all have this view. I'm asking you, are you sure this is the case?
Yes, I'm sure this is the case, but it is subjected to a condition.
So you're sure? So it can also be right to kill an innocent person?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is based on my own understanding of morality.
No,
because
Mahesh, with all respect, my friend, I'm not interested in your personal understanding. If the argument you're presenting is just for you, in the 8 billion people that are on the earth, this is your personal opinion. It holds no. I have no reason to take it seriously at all. None. By all means, have your personal opinion. Have a nice evening. Have a cup of tea. Go and sit with your family. Enjoy yourself, because you're wasting my time, and with respect to your time as well. Why? Because we're not talking about personal opinions. I think you need to realize what you're saying, because you're saying two opposite things at the same time. Killing an innocent is wrong, and then subjectively. So actually,
that is why I want to understand from you.
No, Mahesh. This is the other way around. You already agree with me. Killing an innocent person is wrong, but then you say, actually, no, maybe not.
So that's
I want to understand. So you need to present the reason why you think that morality is subjective.
I need to tell you why morality is subjective. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So is killing an innocent person is killing an innocent person wrong?
Because, like, as of like my understanding, currently we do not have like any firm anchor.
No, Mahesh. Again, you're doing the same thing. First, you're bringing your personal opinion, and then you're saying that you don't have an anchor. I know you don't. The Quran says, and they have nothing but conjecture.
So that's what I want to understand.
So you're coming from a place of conjecture. Now, if you want me to even entertain what you're saying, I want to know how you've arrived at the position that you've arrived at. Now, what you're saying to me doesn't make sense. If you say you agree with me and you agree with the Bas and Irfan, I'm sure that murder is killing an innocent person is wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the question I then ask, because you used the word you don't believe in objective morality, because we're saying objective this is wrong. There's no doubt about this, right? Or do you have doubt about it?
Yeah, I don't have any doubt about it. Yeah, killing an innocent
that's an objective moral. Congratulations, Mahesh. We finally agree.
But again, right? So this is where I wanted to understand.
Mahesh, first I need you to internalize, because I'm talking to you now. Before we've come on, we've tried to be, and you just go around. So I'm talking to you straight as an individual, right? You have just accepted that killing an innocent person is wrong objectively.
Yeah. You
just said it. Now, if you could bring a but, then you're saying that what you've just said, that's the words that have come out of your mouth.
No, but what I'm saying, but hear my complete thoughts. Okay. So as you said earlier, thought of one or multiple people may not be relevant in this case. We have to when we say that something is objectively correct, we have to make sure that this is correct no matter who thinks what. Okay, so when it comes to killing an innocent, there might be people who may think that it may be right. Some people's they might kill an innocent.
So okay, 1 second. So now Mahesh, you're saying you agree that murdering an innocent person is wrong objectively, but now you're saying, but there may be other people who don't.
Yeah.
So have you come to advocate for a position that you don't hold?
Again, so when I started off my this discussion, I said that this is like my own subjective understanding of killing an innocent, which is wrong. But
Mahesh, 1 second. You've just agreed, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth.
Okay.
You've just agreed that killing an innocent person is wrong.
Yeah.
Objectively.
I didn't say that. I didn't say objectively.
You said objectively. Are you taking that back? You can take it back, no problem. I'll allow you to do that, no problem. Do you want to take it back?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't say that objectively.
Mahesh,
Was
Mahesh, with
based
all due
on
respect,
my
Mahesh, with
understanding.
all due respect, I actually, with all and respect to the to the people on with me as well, the brothers, I'm not going to allow this one to go around in circles. Really, I think Dr. Imran asked you, is it objectively if something is wrong all the time, every time, that's an objective moral truth.
Yeah,
Okay, and you agreed that killing an innocent person is wrong.
yeah,
Period.
yep.
Now, other people accepting it, not accept it, is irrelevant, because from your point of view, you've already accepted now that there's an objective absolute when it comes to murdering an innocent person. It's always wrong.
Okay,
Well,
So
Abbas,
let's not run around in circles, please. You've accepted
okay,
something.
fine,
Please
fine.
stick to what
Okay,
you've
fine,
accepted.
fine. So I just
Now,
want to
one second,
say
Mahesh. One second, Mahesh. I'll let Brother Irfan just come in there quickly, and then we're
Yeah.
going to get. There's about 4 other people waiting, so I really want to get the other people on here as well. Brother Irfan.
I want to ask Mahesh a question. So basically, when you're saying that you don't say it's objectively wrong, you say it's subjectively wrong, and then you conceive the fact that it's possible that there are other people that may differ with you on this point. They see that killing is like a serial killer. He does it for his enjoyment or whatever, and so some of them may see this as something right. So my question to you right now is your opinion that murder is wrong any more valuable than their opinion that murder is right?
So again, right? So this is where my
No, please answer the question.
yeah. So my I believe that my own subjective value is more valuable than their opinion. Yeah. In
So
this particular.
where's the criteria that your opinion is more valuable than his opinion?
So we, like all of us, we have like this internal innate moral compass. So when we
Okay.
look at the situation, our innate moral compass appeals to our decision and our worldview. So this is based on that. I'm saying that my
So he says
like
his inner thing is pointing him towards that murder
exactly.
is
So
right.
that's
So he will
exactly
argue the same thing. So
exactly.
why
So
is
that's what
your
I'm saying.
opinion more valuable? This is
Exactly.
why I
So
don't get.
so that's why I said that it is like based on my own subjective understanding. My
Okay.
that.
So
Yeah.
the fact that you are saying that murder is wrong is just you have a different taste than him, but your opinions are on the same level, right? This is what you're saying.
So if you are talking about the subjective understanding of my own moral judgment about that particular incident, then I would say that my subjective opinion about that situation is that my moral opinions are higher in for that
Yeah, I
particular.
know, but the thing is, you cannot say they are higher. You have to say why they are higher.
Yeah,
So you say
exactly.
it's my subjective opinion, and on the
I give you the
other
reason.
side, we have another person who says it's my objective opinion is this. So
Exactly.
if it's just the claim that you claim something to be objective opinion, he's claiming it as well. So if you want to say that your subjective opinion is higher, you need to give a criteria for that.
So I already gave you the criteria. The criteria was that like everyone have this innate
Yeah, but
sense of
no.
morality.
But he can claim the same. He can
Yeah.
claim
So
that this is.
And you might, and Mahesh, and to be fair, you might have societies that actually have the majority of that society want to kill a
yeah.
particular group of people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they
Yeah,
become the majority. And
yes.
they'll say, to us, it seems perfectly reasonable because these people, they might seem a bit dodgy. They seem like a threat. We're going to basically commit genocide against them.
Yeah.
And this has happened over and over again in history.
Even the
Irfan's
Arabs,
point,
the Quraysh.
Irfan's point is very valid.
Yeah.
On what basis would you be able to argue, other than to me or to my society, it feels wrong? On what basis would you be able to say, as a matter of fact, your killing of an innocent person is absolutely wrong, and these are the reasons why it's wrong? At the moment, all you're saying is it somehow innately
Brother
feels
Abbas, one thing.
different. Yeah, sorry, brother Irfan.
And what I find very dishonest of what Mahesh is trying to do, so basically, brother Mahesh, if you're saying that your understanding of murder being wrong is subjective, then you have to be honest enough to agree to the fact that your subjective opinion has no more value than other opinions. the best argument, and I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you with your atheistic argument, because even like I don't know if you're atheist or agnostic, you're doing a bad job. Like, I think even other atheists and agnostic, they would be offended. So the best argument I hear they bring forward in this situation you're in right now, they say, well, we have social consensus. So we have a society, and the society agreed. Yes, I'm helping you with this. The problem with social consensus is, if you use that argument, that you have to be honest enough to agree that in the future, when there comes a society that as a society decides that killing is okay, and killing a minority is okay, or burying your daughters alive is okay, or raping women is okay, then you have to agree to the fact that this is possible, and then in that society this will be morally right. Will you accept this? So you cannot just say yeah to the argument and then not accept the implications. You cannot just cherry pick.
Yep. So I will not accept that, as you said. What I believe. So what I'm trying to say.
You accept the argument, you don't accept the conclusion, like the implications of the argument.
That's not what I'm saying. Okay. So we have discussed an example where like we spoke about murdering, right? So this is like kind of like a black and white for me. Like, I can say that murdering an innocent is.
All right, Mahesh, we're running around in circles as
usual.
No, we are. I'm sorry. We are. Mahesh, with all due respect, I have to value people's time here. There are a lot of people.
If you can give me just 30 seconds, I will
I think we've given you 22. We've given you over 20 minutes so far, and I think even that was very generous, to be fair. But Mahesh, thanks a lot for coming on, and we'll definitely get you on again. But it'll probably be a 5-10 minute encounter, because as I say, running around in circles gets you dizzy. All right.
So just to Mahesh, I just want to understand what we're asking you to do is have the conviction to stick with the conclusions and the outcomes and the consequences of the positions you're holding. The problem is that you don't do that in discussions, and so the discussion comes across as disingenuous.
Right.
Now, I'm sure you're a nice guy. I'm sure you have good intentions, and I'm sure you're thinking very deeply about these things, but you don't demonstrate that in the conversations. And it's clear when you've already admitted that you don't think objectively that killing an innocent person is the thing to do. It's wrong.
Because
then you've changed it. It shows that you haven't thought this through.
I didn't change it.
What we're going to do, Mahesh, we're not going to have a further discussion. I'm just trying to say to you that we're not being horrible to you. It may come across that way to you, but we're actually trying to explain that you need to improve the positions that you're arguing from, and understand that you have to accept the consequences of where you're arguing from. Until then, Mahesh, come again, please do, and we'll have a conversation again, I'm sure. I wish you all the best, Mahesh.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I can take a deep breath again. And okay, so Karl, we're going to get you on next, brother, but just need to have your camera up. Lovely. If you could just touch your glasses for me. That's great. You can turn your camera off if you like. We're going to get you on now, basically. All right, you're on now, Karl.
Hello?
Karl. Hi, Karl. Welcome to the stream.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, that's a lot clearer, Karl. That's much better.
Yeah, I got some headphones.
Lovely.
I'm not here to. I know you said it was purely for other opinions. I've just got two really short questions, because I'm recently reverted or converted, or however you say it.
Sure.
I've got two. One question is about music.
Sure.
Is all music haram or no?
So, Karl, one of the things is that what we don't do on these streams is enter into what's called fiqhi questions, i.e. jurisprudence, which require really somebody of, knowledge and experience to be able to answer those.
Yeah.
The general consensus, I can tell you, however, is that generally the scholars, they shy away from music. Pretty much most music, except for the drum, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, what we can see, however, Karl, is even today we can see most music and its influence on society tends to generally be quite negative. So especially when it comes to, so even the minority opinion that you might find that will say, oh, this type or this type might be permissible, for example. Certainly vocals, making noises with your mouth and stuff, this is not generally regarded as impermissible. But any type, even that, even without instruments, if you have abusive words, derogatory words for women and for people, for other people, foul words. This would not be permissible because it's not seen as decent. This is not a good influence upon your heart and upon your soul, upon your mind. And as you probably are aware, there's certain types of music that can really drive the mood. Yeah, you watch Sylvester Stallone, you know, and he's in the ring, and then you got everyone wants to get up and start boxing, right? Because it does have an influence on how we act and how we react. Okay, so generally the consensus is yes, stay away from music. There is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that there will be some people near the time of the Day of Judgment who will actually make music permissible. They'll make it allowed, basically. So if you ask me what do I personally do, if there's a majority opinion, and even if there is like doubt, small about certain aspects of it, I just try and stay away from it, to be honest.
Okay.
Better safe than sorry, yeah?
I only ask that because at work, I keep, we've got a radio on at work, and I keep, when the guys are not looking, I turn it off.
No, but you don't have to do that, Karl, by the way. So, for example, you know, when you go into a supermarket or you go somewhere, there's some music going on in the background.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about it. The difference
so that's just background sound.
So because the difference is, if you now start jiving and you're dancing and you're immersing yourself into that, then that would not be permissible.
Okay. But
something that's not in your control, and it's and your colleagues, it's not in their Sharia. It's not for them impermissible because they're not Muslims. We shouldn't really force our opinions or our way of life, our values, Islamic values, upon them.
So I don't.
I'm just saying. So if there's a work colleague, you know, a few tables away, and he's drinking some alcohol or whatever, it's his business. You know, let him get on with what he's doing, basically. You know, so what it is if there's like background music that you're not really responsible for, you've entered in a shop, you got in an aeroplane. I mean, they play a bit of music before takeoff or whatever. You can't suddenly look for the emergency exit and start jumping out of the airplane. You see what I mean? And you can't tell the captain, "Can you shut that off, please?" So that's sort of not really a problem. But generally, yes, the consensus is stay away from musical instruments and music. There's a few limited instruments that, like a drum and what have you, that are allowed. Nasheeds or singing is allowed, where you sing the praises of God or the prophets of God. That type of thing is allowed. Anything lewd and crude and that sort of stuff would not be allowed, regardless of whether there's music or there's no music, basically. Brothers, do you want to add anything, or is that?
I would like just to
brother
brother. Firstly, Assalamu alaikum, brother Karl. I'm very happy to subhanallah see you, and that you hear you, mashallah, you embraced Islam. I'm very happy for you. And I don't want to actually like comment. I think brother Abbas, mashallah, he responded very well to that question. But maybe because I'm a revert myself, subhanallah, and I don't know if you know, but I'm from Germany, and I grew up here in this society. And you know, in the beginning, you reminded me kind of myself, because in the beginning you try to find out everything, what is allowed, what is not allowed, and then you try to embrace it all at once, and it can quite become overwhelming. And subhanallah, what even the scholars and advice in Islam is that we take it slowly, and Islam does not ask a person to change overnight. So alhamdulillah, it's good that you're informing yourself upon these issues, and the closer you want to get to Allah by avoiding what's prohibited and joining what's lawful. This is a good sign, but you should always check your own capacity and your own limits, because subhanallah, we can be very motivated in the beginning, and motivation can be dangerous. So there is a foundation, and then you get motivated, and then after the motivation drops, you go back to that foundation. So start building that foundation, and just don't act just upon the motivation. Look like, okay, what is my capacity? What do I need to learn next? Get the basics, get the 5 pillars of Islam, learn about them. Then about the faith, what do we believe through some basic lectures or something. And then if you can take one step further, you take one step further, inshallah. And just take it slowly until you get there, inshallah. Barakallah.
Thank you. It's funny you say that, because you literally answered my second question with your answer, Irfan. And it was basically, my second question was, not so much now. I do believe in my heart that I have got control over it now, but I have been struggling with addiction. And that was one of the things that I've been scared to go to mosque, because I do struggle sometimes, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm just kind of there for the sake of being there. I want to do it properly. And like with regard to like wudu and morning prayer and stuff, I do it, but I'm still half in my brain. I still believe I'm doing it incorrectly, and it's like almost like I'm mocking it, because I try to say it in Arabic.
To that. Yeah,
I try my hardest to recite in Arabic, but obviously I've read from some narration people that if you don't say it properly, you shouldn't say it at all, and that scares me in my heart.
There is a hadith. I can look it up, but I will paraphrase it while I will look it up later, inshallah. Maybe I can find it. But it basically says, like, you know what's beautiful about Islam? First thing, regards to belief, you have to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need our worship. So the worship is something good for us, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He appreciates every effort we make, and He rewards us for that. And sometimes for someone who is like, years into Islam and he got the experience and stuff, the same act may be much easier because he doesn't need to invest so much effort to get this act done, subhanAllah. And there are evidence from the Sunnah, for example, the hadith that I wanted to show you, that shows that if the effort is stronger, but the result may be weaker, you get more rewarded than when the result is very good with less effort.
Okay.
And there is one very beautiful narration where the Prophet ﷺ, he talks about the one who can read the Qur'an very beautifully. So reads the Qur'an very eloquently and stuff. And there is a reward in paradise promised for this person. So then he says, but the one who cannot read the Qur'an beautifully, but he struggles. He's trying to read it like properly, but he cannot. He says that his reward will be multiple times the one of the first one. Subhanallah.
Okay.
So this one is getting a great reward, and the one who cannot read it properly, he's struggling, he gets a multiple reward. If anyone in the chat knows the hadith, he can bring it up. It's a very beautiful hadith. So this shows you that we have to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His might doesn't gain anything from us making it perfectly, or if He don't make it perfectly, we don't harm Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in any way. It is something good for us, and Allah sees us all the time, and He sees we're at the beginning of our journey, and we're doing the effort to do it correct. And the fact that you're fearing that you're doing it incorrect and stuff is just the shaitan trying to make you despair, because what he's trying to do is he's gonna like annoy you with this whisperings, oh, you're not doing it right, or if you don't do it right, you should leave it, until like he gets you away from prayer. Like for him, like the alarm is on right now. He wants to keep you from like starting your journey and practicing properly. So subhanallah, just know, brother, that the effort is well appreciated from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you get a reward for that. And no one learned that. Only the born Muslims maybe that they can say it's so good because they learned it as kids and they know the language before, or they used to go to. So they put effort in learning as well, maybe years or something, and you're just starting a journey now. And we know that taking a shahada is like starting newborn. All your sins are forgiven. So you are like this kid, like subhanallah, in that sense that is learning Islam.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so don't worry about this, brother, inshallah.
No, but again, I thank you guys for your time.
Karl, by the way, we can inshallah support you in anything you want.
You've already sent me a lot of stuff. Actually, I was going to show you've sent me my clear Qur'an. I've got lots of like material on like the life of Muhammad, questions to ask, hadith. I've got my map, and also with that, do I have to dress a certain, like, do I have to put the hat on? Because I've got one. I don't know what you call it. Sorry, again, butchering the name.
No, that's fine.
Karl, do I wear that?
Karl, one thing I want to just say to you is please relax and don't feel nervous about offending anybody. Okay.
No, okay.
And even if you do go to the mosque and somebody perhaps wrongfully reacts in a way that you feel that perhaps they were offended, then don't be upset yourself, because really be upset for that person. Because in Islam, we're supposed to be very supportive of our new Muslim brothers and sisters, and we help them. I'll give you one very interesting narration of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where a new convert to Islam, a Bedouin, he starts urinating in the corner of the masjid, in the prayer room, prayer hall, right? I mean, in those days they had sand, basically. They didn't have carpets and things. But anyway, the Sahaba became very angry. The Prophet said to them, "Stop, let him finish." And then
Not only that,
explained to
Abbas.
him. Sorry,
Not
go
only
on,
that,
Imran. Go on, Imran.
it wasn't even that. I don't know if this person was a Muslim or not, but I'm assuming, I'm not sure. But not only that, Karl, assalamu alaikum, my brother. I love you to hear from you. He told them to protect his modesty, so they prevented him from being seen by other people.
Okay.
So imagine this: someone's doing something horrible in the prayer hall, and not only are you saying let him finish, but cover his modesty. Like they sort of made sure that he wasn't seen. You know, his private parts weren't seen by other people. Let him finish, and then sorry, Abbas, you carry on. I just wanted to make
mashallah, jazakallah khair for that addition, because it is very significant. And then it was explained to him nicely that in the prayer area we keep it clean and hygienic, and he told the Prophet, I think, told the people to throw some water over it and then cover it, clean the area. But what that shows you, Karl, is that, and may Allah instill that in all of us Muslims, that we have this nurturing love for our brothers and sisters, whether they're born Muslims or whether they're new Muslims. They make a mistake, they get something wrong, it's okay. Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already told you, do your best and excel and do your best. And when you fall short, Allah is the most merciful, perfectly merciful. And perfectly wise. He knows your capability, your capacity.
I was going to say that as well. Sorry to interject. When I pray, and if I do ever get that kind of doubt that I may have prayed wrong, I already know that He knows.
Yes.
He already knows that already. That I'm already. You know what I mean? He already knows. So it doesn't matter.
So please just enjoy the journey, relax, and I hope, inshallah ta'ala, nobody makes you feel uncomfortable, because that for me, I find that very, very irritating, because it's
but I haven't, not to this day. I have not met one Muslim that hasn't taken me wholehearted.
It's very un-Islamic to make your brother or sister feel uncomfortable because they've made a mistake. We shouldn't do that. But for Brother Karl, if there's anything else we can help you with,
appreciate that.
And if you want to talk to us, like, you know, I generally, for a selective few who need initial help, mashallah, we give them our number. They can call us, WhatsApp us.
Oh, lovely!
We can support you, inshallah, and help you. If you don't mind me asking, who did you do shahada with?
It was with Hamza on Hamza's Den.
Mashallah, may Allah reward you.
Brother Abbas, I just found the hadith I mentioned. May I just read it out? So the hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim, so it's authentic. And it says that Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, reported, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the one who is proficient in the recitation of the Qur'an will be with the honorable and the obedient scribes, the angels. And he who recites the Qur'an and finds it difficult to recite, doing his best to recite it in the best way possible, will have 2 rewards. Subhanallah. So don't worry, brother. This is like even the evidence from the Quran and Sunnah. I will put the hadith in the chat as well.
Okay, thank you.
So, Brother Karl, we'd like to maybe get you on one day just to ask you a little bit about your journey and
I'd like to explain, because it's quite I actually found I actually thought that it was Christianity that saved my life originally. I did explain to Hamza, but I had a lot going on in my personal life. I was homeless. I'd lost my job, my missus. My whole life was ruined, basically. And I got to a point where I had 5 things happen to me in the course of 2 days that I couldn't put coincidence against. I tried my hardest to scientifically think of a logical explanation of what's happened. And then I ended up going to a Christian church and what's it called? What are they called? An evangelistic church. And it was basically all about going out and getting people to see that the Lord's the only way, and la-di-da-di-da. And I then come across Hamza's Den on YouTube, and Mufti Menk and a couple of other people that were just basically speaking about the history behind Jesus and Christianity and what we're seeing and what we're told at schools and whatnot. And then I started to read the Torah, I started to read the Bible. Then I started to read the Qur'an without, but through an app on my phone. And then I kind of chronologically, even though it doesn't make sense to say a Muslim to hear it, but in my mind, it was like Judaism. They got it. They kind of disrupted the word. He sent another messenger. Christians, they disrupted the word. He then sends Muhammad, peace be upon him. He gives the final word. And chronologically, my brain kind of thought that you have the newest, most updated software on your phone. You don't have the old one. So he come with the newest, most updated message for the entire world, not just one set of people. And my brain instantly went click. I must be a Muslim. I must be, even if I don't know it, I must be. And then Hamza's there, and about 3 or 4 weeks of watching it, and then I finally joined his channel and started to talk to him. And then, alhamdulillah, I went on there and did my shahada, and ever since that, my whole life has been ingrained in just the history of Islam, the culture. I've been trying to learn Arabic, even to the point where I'm really thinking about moving to a more Islamic area, because there's not enough of it here. And I feel like I'm losing out on a life that I could have had years ago had I discovered this sooner.
MashaAllah, brother, may Allah reward you, and may Allah inspire us all to also value what we have, alhamdulillah, because really to be gifted with Iman, especially when you've not had it, and then to be given it, you realize the huge difference, the chasm that was there before and how it's been filled now. And may Allah bestow us Muslims, inshallah, born Muslims, with that love and, and keep that, mashallah, love fired up as well. But brother, Jazakallah khair, thank you very much for coming on. But we will definitely, I'm sure, speak in the future as well, brother Karl.
Yeah, appreciate your time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Lovely brother, mashallah, lovely brother. Desi Munda, if you want to come on, you need to just have your camera on, and we need to identify you. Let's get Frank on quickly in the meantime. Frank. Hello, Frank.
Good day, guys. Can you hear me?
Hey, Frank. Yes, we can, but I think your picture's frozen, Frank. But that's all right.
Oh, well.
we could hear you. How are things with you, Frank?
I'm pretty good, and I hope you guys are well.
We're well, thank you. Are you shortly rushing off to work, or what's your routine?
Well, I'm working at home today, and but I normally have a call in 40 minutes, but it's not on today, so I'm okay.
Well, I don't know if we'll have you on for 40 minutes, Frank, but but go on. What have you got in store for us today, Frank? Come on.
Look, I want to read you something from 1 Kings when. Like you know that Solomon built the temple in Jerusalem. You don't have any problem with that, do you?
Frank, why don't you quickly read what you're going to read, ask the question, and I'll get Dr. Imran.
So I'm reading from 1 Kings chapter 8. So this is Solomon praying at the dedication of the temple. So he starts in, this is from 1 Kings 8, from verse 22. Then Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord in the presence of all the assembly of Israel, and spread out his hands towards heaven and said, O Lord, God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven above or on earth beneath, keeping covenant and showing steadfast love to your servants who walk before you with all their heart. Now I'm just going to skip down to verse 27. He says, but will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, heaven and the highest heaven cannot contain you. How much less this house that I have built? Yet have regard to the prayer of your servant and to his plea, O Lord my God, listening to the cry and to the prayer that your servant prays before you this day, that your eyes may be open night and day towards this house, the place which you have said, my name shall be there, that you may listen to the prayer that your servant offers towards this place, and listen to the plea of your servant and of your people Israel when they pray towards this place, and listen in heaven, your dwelling place, when you hear, forgive. So you've got, Solomon's built this house for God, but he admits this is not where God lives, but God's name's there, and he's saying that the people should pray towards the house, and then God's going to hear. Now, what my question is, what I find funny is although the Quran talks about Solomon, I would have thought if the Quran was kind of rational, it would make some sort of case for now the Kaaba is like the temple was, and that's why people should pray towards it. Just as Solomon said, people should pray towards the temple there. But it doesn't say anything about that. And in fact, all it says about Solomon is these tales about talking birds. And like, I was just going to read in Surah 27.
Frank, before you go down there, the words that you quoted to me earlier from Kings, whose words are those?
The words of Solomon.
Recorded by who?
Well, he would have had royal recorders and people like that.
Right. And when's the earliest text that we have for those words?
So I'm not going down that line. To
but
me,
this is the
this
problem.
says,
But you see, Frank, in that is the problem. Because you see, look, if you start quoting to me, this is the truth, this is fact, and I'm going to measure everything by what I've just now said or referred to, the very first thing you need to do is verify whether those words are in fact from God Almighty, or are these the words of man? If they're the words of man, then it doesn't quite frankly matter, right? Because words of man, we know, can be very jumbled up, mixed up, corrupted, wrong, everything else, right? Now, we've been through this so many times, Frank, and you still quote words from the Bible with the underlying assumption that these words are verbatim, accurate words relayed by God Almighty and recorded as a consequence, right? Which they are not, because we can't even establish.
Abbas, I'm not taking this.
Well, I'm sorry, Frank, I've already dished it out. It's not about.
Do you have any reason?
It's already been dished out to you. It's.
Do you have any reason?
But I tell you what,
Frank, this is not what Solomon said.
Okay, Frank, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let Dr. Imran briefly answer you, but Doctor, sorry, briefly, and then we're going to, inshallah, get a couple of the other guests on. But we're not going to, as I say, running around in circles, Frank, it just makes you dizzy. But Dr. Imran.
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know if it's worth engaging with this, to be honest with you, Frank. I mean, in this, you quoted, you're saying that you're quoting from Solomon. How long ago was Solomon around? Peace be upon him.
He was around 1000 BC.
Okay, so you're talking about 3,000 years ago, yeah?
Yep.
And you're quoting something that we find, let's say, the earliest 1,000 years later, and you're saying to me this is verbatim the words.
Imran, do you have a reason to believe this is not what Solomon said?
Yeah, I'm coming to the reason. I'm coming to it. So do you believe that God can forgive your sins without, if you just pray to him, without the shedding of blood?
Well, no, because he said that.
Okay, so read the prayer again. Read verse 20. Read verse 30 again.
And listen to the plea of your servant and of your people Israel, and when they pray towards this place, and listen in heaven your dwelling place, and when you hear, forgive.
Okay, so do you believe that God can forgive the sins of an individual without the shedding of blood if they pray for repentance?
Where was Solomon standing when he said this?
I'm asking you a question.
He's standing in front of the altar, which is all about the shedding of blood.
Because that's not, this is very specific here. Here from heaven, your dwelling place. So now we're in this position, and this is, I think we'll end it with this. We're in this position where you're claiming this is something from Solomon. You're claiming this is authentic, although we have nothing for over 1,000 years after it's written to verify the source. You're saying, and you're using this as a criteria to then compare to the Quran, which is, I don't even know why I should accept your criteria. You have to present it, but you're saying to me, look, it's like me saying to you, prove that banging a drum Sunday morning is not the same as mass. This is the equivalent you're asking me to do. Prove that banging a drum is not the equivalent of mass on a Sunday, because you're asking for me to prove it. You're saying to me, tell me why you think this is doubt, makes you doubt. So I presented with you a salvation method within the verses that you just quoted to me. The salvation message is simple: hear from heaven, your dwelling place, and when you hear, forgive. clean, nothing else required. Doesn't say when you hear and you see the blood that we've shed for you, when you hear and we've done our sacrifice for you, when you hear, none of these things are mentioned there. It's very clear what's going on here. Now I ask you, do you agree with this mechanism of salvation? And I had to ask you before you started this, because I knew that afterwards you would change your mind. You said you don't agree with it because you're thinking of Hebrews 9, and then now you're sort of turning against that. Now, what I'm going to say to you is, go and look at Hebrews 9. Go and look at this verse and this prayer that you're suggesting that Solomon said. Reconcile them, and then come back and then have a chat with us.
I want to suggest to you, like,
good day, Frank.
The Quran talks about what Solomon said.
Frank, good day,
and it
Frank.
attributes fairy stories to him, and you know that.
Okay,
Frank,
one second, just before you let Frank, does the Bible contain every word that Solomon said?
No.
Are there words that Solomon may have said that are not in the Bible?
There, of course.
Okay.
There are many.
Have a great day, Frank. I'll see you later.
Good day, Frank.
I didn't kick him. He left.
Have a nice day. No, I did actually. I got rid of him. But I think we did it nicely. We didn't do it disrespectfully.
So this is one of the things is that people, and this is the same thing that we said to Mahesh actually, and I'm just sort of trying to stick with this a little bit today, that you have to have the conviction of your position, understand the consequences. He is a Christian who believes that the only way to forgive sin is for God to come down in the form of a human being and sacrifice himself on a cross to pay the price for sin. Pay whom? You can have that discussion. Pay God, pay the devil, whoever you want. And that's the only way to remove sin. But why? Because they have this quote, only through the shedding of blood is there forgiveness of sin. Completely goes against the Old Testament. There is no concept of that being the only mechanism of sin. And literally quotes the words from Solomon, where Solomon himself says, hear from heaven your dwelling place, and when you hear, forgive. Completely undermines the salvific method that he put forward. And then he's still going to argue that this is a statement that he holds as a criteria with which he's going to challenge the Quran. I don't understand. So I wish him all the best. Let him reconcile these issues and he can come back.
And if anybody does understand this argument, please do email us, because we would love to understand it.
I'm sure that someone would read that.
Mr. Nazam. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Were you at Speaker's Corner today?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Any nice discussions?
Not really.
No. Well, you got to chat to a few people, I'm sure, and had.
Yeah. Some people. So.
Did you go out to eat with the boys, or was it rushing home?
Yeah, coming back home.
Well, we're very, very grateful for your rushing back, Nazam, and
no problem. Apologize
for coming on to the stream. Now we've got Mr. Desi Munda waiting. Desi Munda, can you just touch your moustache for me? Thank you very much, because it's a very, very impressive moustache. Now, if you'd like to turn your camera off, that's great. We will get you on. And just to let everybody know, Desi Munda is a very attractive young man. Nothing like the picture that he has there. By the way, I'm not saying that picture is unattractive. It's just that Desi Munda himself has got a very nice beard and he's got lovely moustache and everything. It's like very manly. Desi Munda, welcome to the stream.
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, Desi Munda.
Yeah.
Now, Desi Munda, have you got a name that we can call you? Because Desi Munda is going to be quite sort of like, is it any
just
name?
Call me Fahad. Fahad.
Sorry?
Fahad.
Fahad. Okay, Fahad. So are you Muslim, Fahad?
No. I'm
you're
atheist.
not. You're atheist. So you've basically you were born in a Muslim family, is that right?
Yeah.
And then you rejected Islam, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Why did you do that, Desi Munda? Explain yourself. What's going on? What's going on?
Yeah, I just don't find the arguments for God convincing.
What arguments have you heard that you don't find convincing?
I went to the Dawah stream on Friday, but I had some connection issues. But they asked me the same question. They asked me what kind of arguments have you heard? And I said that, the normal ones, like the first cause argument, but I don't find them convincing.
Okay. So, just looking at it from a rational point of view, when you look at the universe, do you think that there must be something that preceded the universe, that must have come before the universe?
Yeah, so I accept that something can't come from nothing.
Right.
Universe has to come from something.
Right.
It's just that I think it's too much speculation to be more specific.
Okay,
Like
but
say
that's
it's God.
to some extent, you know what? To some extent, I would agree with you. To be very specific would be difficult, but the notion is reasonable, though, right? You'd accept that it's a reasonable notion, but there has to be some preceding step, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And is it reasonable in your mind that you can't have an infinite series of preceding steps? There has to be a necessary existence. Something has to exist as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Okay. So
But-
in essence, sorry, brother Arfan.
No, continue. I just thought.
So I'm just saying. So in essence, you believe that there has to be a necessary existence that everything else is underpinned on. That is, that basically everything else can come from, but it itself is necessary. It has to necessarily exist. You accept that notion, then, right?
Yeah, something has to be necessary.
Okay. So now, okay, you know what I'm going to do now, Desi Munda, which is a bit unusual for a lot of people, and they don't do this. Would you say that what the two possibilities is that it's just some sort of matter and energy and as a hard fact, despite it being contingent, despite it being made up of different parts that could be assembled in a different way, you'd have to accept that there is a possibility, even though it might be very, very remote, of it being non-conscious, non-intelligent, and it's just there as a matter of fact. That's one possibility, even though from my perspective, it would be very, very unlikely. But let's say you would have to accept that, right?
You're saying matter. Sorry, I didn't get you. You're saying matter.
So whatever
can't
this
be
necessary
conscious?
existence is, it's not God, basically. That's what I'm saying. That's one possibility that the atheist will bring forward, right?
Yeah.
And the other possibility, would you accept it could be a conscious, intelligent being that pretty much falls within the definition of what God is, what Allah is, right?
Yeah, I think it's a coherent idea. God is a coherent idea.
So it's a possibility, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, if the second possibility is possible or rational or reasonable, there are lots of people who've claimed that they were sent by this creator. And in particular, the last prophet, peace be upon him, said that the Qur'an that he's brought is a miracle from this creator. Have you studied the miracles of the Qur'an, the miraculous nature of the Qur'an?
Well, I have a handicap because I don't speak Arabic, so I can't really study it that much.
Nor do I, but I've managed to study quite a lot of it. I wouldn't say enough or to a very high level, but certainly to a reasonable level, enough to convince myself that this could not have been the book of a man or any human being or any spirit for that matter. So I'm just asking you, what have you studied about the miraculous nature of the Quran and why the challenge that it makes, that it's a miracle from Allah that cannot be imitated, cannot be copied, cannot be bettered? Have you studied that miracle at all?
Well, people take many different, like some people talk about scientific miracles, some people talk about mathematical miracles, but I think the biggest one require knowledge in Arabic, because they talk about like balagha and this rhetoric and eloquence, but I don't think in Arab you can understand that. So it's like I'm kind of stuck. Okay,
so I'll give you a very interesting article to read before Brother Arfan comes in. If you go on to Sapiens Institute, it goes into, in fact, I think I've got the link here. Let me just put it in the chat right now for anybody who's interested. It's about a 90-minute read. I've just put
I've read it.
You've read that one?
Yeah. I think, well, you can talk about it because I read it like a year ago, but I'm pretty sure I've read it.
Okay. Do you know what it's about?
Yeah, it lists out like certain criteria about, like, it talks about Surah Al-Kawthar, right?
Yeah, sorry. The link that I've actually sent out is about the claimed contradictions, but I beg your pardon. There is another link that I have here. Yeah, it's about Surah Al-Kawthar. That's right. Yes. So you said that you read the article, right?
Yeah.
What other explanation can you come up with to suggest that this was not from God? Do you think somebody could have
well,
just come up with
the
this?
thing is the criteria that they give. I don't remember the exact ones. If you can put them up, but I do remember what I do remember. My objection is that I felt the criteria, they were too like arbitrary.
In what sense? Why were they arbitrary? What was the
well, I think
arbitrary? What were the arbitrary?
yeah. So so like one of the points was I'm not remembering clearly, but I'm pretty sure one of the points was that like every verse has to be 10 words. It was something like that.
Every word has to be 10 words.
Sorry, every verse, not word. Every verse had to be 10 words.
But I don't think that's one of the criteria necessarily. But it's a whole collection of reasons to believe that it's a miracle, that it was uncopyable. It was a sorry, you got an echo on your, so I'm just going to mute you. I think maybe you just need to close the additional screen if you've got one open there. But okay, look, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let Brother Irfan come in there, and then Dr. Imran. And you can unmute yourself, by the way, Desi, when you need to speak. It's just that there's a bit of an echo coming from your microphone. Brother Irfan.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, Fahad, I think was your name, brother. So I wanna rewind a bit. First, I have a point on the argument on God. Before we talk about the linguistic argument, I have something to say about that as well. But I want to talk about the necessary existence, since you accept that there must be something necessary in the beginning. From that, everything emerged. But you're basically saying God is a coherent idea, but it could be a mechanical force. Did I understand you right?
Yes.
Okay. So I wanna ask you a question. If it gets like very cold, like minus 10 degrees, what happens with water?
It freezes.
It freezes. So there's a mechanical force that makes the water freeze when the conditions are fulfilled. When the condition is fulfilled, that under this temperature water starts freezing, then this mechanical force cannot decide, I'm going to freeze the water, or maybe I'm going to leave it. No, the condition is fulfilled, the water is going to freeze. Okay. So what my argument is, what in regards to the necessary existence, is that whatever the necessary existence is must be eternal, right?
Yes.
Okay. So our universe is not eternal, though. It had a beginning, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we have an eternal cause and a temporary effect. The thing is, if the eternal cause is mechanical, it would mean that whenever the conditions are fulfilled to create a universe, it has to create. It cannot stop. It cannot decide, I want to create a universe now, I don't want to create a universe now. And so with other words, if the eternal cause of the universe would be a mechanical force, the effect of the eternal cause of the universe must be eternal as well and could not be temporary. So how do you explain that a temporal effect came out of an eternal cause?
The eternal cause was timelessly eternal, right? Just to be clear.
Yeah.
Wouldn't this kind of logic rule out God as well?
No, God is outside time and space.
Yeah, but even if the mechanistic thing is outside time and space, there's no when, right?
But that's not the problem. The problem is that the universe is temporal. So the universe had a starting point. It didn't coexist. So I give you an example. The sun has a sun rays, right? So as long the chemical reactions in the sun happen, the rays of the sun, they emit out of the sun, right? So the same thing with the mechanical necessary being, it would be the same. Imagine like the sun is the mechanical necessary being, and the universe is the sun rays that emit out of it. They like, it's like they exist, they coexist. Like you have an eternal cause and eternal effect, and that's like example I'm making. The problem is in reality, you're claiming that there is an eternal cause, a necessary being that is eternally there, but it brought forward a temporal effect. So basically, you're saying that this eternal cause is necessary being. Let me ask you another question. This eternal necessary being, did it had all the conditions to bring forward the universe?
Yeah, it would be like it can't control itself, right? So I guess that would be the only.
Yeah, but why is the universe temporal then? So basically, it's the same. Like, so if let's take this example of the sun again, okay? If the chemical reactions in the sun happening result in the sun emitting sun rays, okay? If the reactions happen but the sun rays don't come, what could we then say about the sun?
If the reaction happens and the sun rays don't come,
yes, like everything is fulfilled.
Doesn't that mean the reaction
conditions
isn't happening?
No, we can say that the sun can control it, that the sun has a will and can control.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yes, that it has the conditions that bring the sun rays forward, but because it has a will, it controls when it wants to bring the sun rays forward or not, right?
Yeah.
So the same thing is the sun has no will. Yeah, this is why the sun emits the rays as long as the chemical processes happen. But with the universe, it's not like that, because the universe is temporal and the necessary being is eternal. So you understand what I mean?
Yeah, but thing is, if the sun is temporal, right? So like it's affected by time. So you can make sense, like you can make meaningful statements about when the rays will come or when the rays will not come. But if the first cause we're talking about, it's outside of time, so there's no when, right? Like if a first cause creates,
I'm not talking about when from the outside, from the first cause perspective. I'm talking from the universe perspective. It's temporal. Or do you think that the universe is eternal?
Yeah, I think the universe is temporal, but this distinction is important, because if there's no when, then there's only one option for the first cause to create. Like you can't wait, right? There's no waiting.
Is there a when point of our universe coming into existence?
No, because the creation of the universe is the creation of time. So there's no when before it.
So I'm not saying before it, but there was a moment where a universe was non-existent and then it came into existence.
There was a moment. Is this moment temporal?
Bro, when you say something is temporal, that means that it was non-existent and it started to exist. This is what it means. I don't know, why you're struggling.
Yeah, but
what means temporal for you?
No, I understand it completely.
What means temporal? Yeah,
related to time.
Okay, so something like when I say this glass exists temporally, that means that there was a time this glass didn't exist, and then it started existing after they put it together. Okay, so when you say the universe is temporal, you're basically saying there was a moment, there was a point, or whatever you want to call it, when there was no universe, and then there was a point when there was a universe.
Well, for the glass, there was a finite amount of time that it didn't exist, and there's now a finite amount of time that it does exist. But for the universe, there's no finite amount of time that it didn't exist. So a statement, don't you think?
For the universe, there's no... I don't get it. What did you say? Can you say it again?
How long was the universe in existence for? Infinite amount of time? Infinite amount of time.
How long was the universe what?
Not in existence for.
I don't know. This is not my question.
So you're you're sort of missing the point, Desi. I don't really want to have this.
No,
I'm just gonna help clarify the point that you guys are talking around. So there's two issues here. The issue is of language. So you're Desi Munda, Fahad, what you're doing is you're holding on very tightly to disallow the question of before the universe. You're holding on very tightly to semantics. No, it has to be time related. If it's not time related, you can't ask the question before. This is a semantical argument. It doesn't take away from the intuitive question of before the Big Bang, before the universe, because it's an intuitive concept, because you're sticking to, no, I can't say before, I can't use the word when because of time. Yeah. Now the problem here is you're talking, it's not an argument, it's the argument from contingency, is not an argument based in time. The question being asked to you is, if the cause of the universe, if the necessary existence that was there eternally, which you've agreed to, is mechanistic, it would act. It would act. Any effects of it, it's a mechanism. Any effects of it would be occurring as soon as that necessary thing. This is a language issue now. As soon as that necessary thing even exists. So it's always existed. So what we don't expect is all the effects that we see would be also eternal in the past. If the thing that is the cause is mechanistic as eternal, the effect would also be eternal. Because why? The thing is a mechanism. It's not choosing to create something. It's mechanistically creating something. Now, the question that Brother Irfan is asking is, how do you explain the fact that you have an eternal existence, which is mechanistic, i.e. has to create, and you find yourself in a non-eternal universe? That's the question that's being asked to you. So I'm just trying to help to move the question forward. So you guys can continue, please. And
well, if the first timeless, and its effect is to create time, then it logically follows that time will have a beginning. It has nothing to do with always the necessitating effect exists.
No.
If the first cause is already timeless.
You're misunderstanding. Let me clarify again for you. How old is the universe?
13 point something, I think. 13.6.
So is the eternal cause also 13.8 billion years?
No, it's timeless. It transcends time.
Okay. So the question being asked you is, why is this universe that you're in 13.8 billion years and not eternal? Because we know that mechanistic thing that you're positing as the existence is eternal. And what that would mean is, why is the universe not infinitely going back into the past for eternity? Because that's what we would expect to see from the thing that you're positing as the cause of the universe.
Or let me
I'll
leave
you with Irfan, because this is not how I wanted to discuss. But you can continue, please.
No, inshallah. Let's even say, could the universe be 20 million years old, a billion years old?
Are you talking about conceivability? Like, can I conceive of it? Yeah.
Okay, so why? So before 20 billion years, did the necessary being fulfill the conditions to bring forward the universe?
20 billion years haven't passed, so the question is meaningless.
The question is not meaningless. You just don't want to answer it. Doctor, we have a problem with they fear the implications today.
This is the same thing. So do you mind if we have a different conversation slightly?
Inshallah.
So why do you accept Fahad, why do you accept that there's a necessary existence? Forget the nature of it. Why do you accept it in the first place?
Well, I don't think a created thing can be necessary. So
what do you mean? How are you differentiating?
What do you mean? Differentiating contingent?
How do you differentiate? So explain to me how you've arrived at this. I want to understand. Because you say you were I don't know. You said you're from a Muslim family. Okay, alhamdulillah, that's fine. And you said that you've suddenly decided, after doing whatever thinking you've done, that God doesn't exist. Yeah. So I want to understand this process. So tell me how you've arrived at this conclusion that you arrived at. Because you've arrived at the conclusion that God doesn't exist, but there is a necessary thing and it has to be mechanistic. I want to understand the process of thinking that you've gone through to get to this, because to me, it doesn't make sense. So I'd like to hear from you, because this is your sort of journey, how you've arrived at this.
Yeah, but just to clarify, I didn't come to the conclusion that God doesn't exist. I came to the conclusion that all arguments for God, they fail. I mean, that's a distinction. But can't claim certainty. Distinction.
But are you certain about anything?
Well, yeah, of course. I'm certain I exist.
Are you sure?
Yeah, pretty sure.
Okay, so there's a possibility that you might not be existing.
Well, I mean, you can go that far, but it's not going to help you.
Yeah, but so this is where we're talking about certainty. So I agree with you that we have to have a degree of probability that we accept as this is enough for me to give me certainty practically. So when you're crossing the road, you don't say, I don't know exactly how fast this, or if this truck is actually there or not. Is it real or not? Is it just a quantum fluctuation? Will it hit me? We make decisions, and we eat food, we live, we sleep. So we carry out our lives with a sense of certainty and decisions we make. Now the problem that comes with it is in these discussions that I find is that's a little bit sort of it's sad when I come across this, is that people become these sort of hyper skeptics when it comes to these discussions, that they aren't practically in their lives. Now, obviously, you're a smart, intelligent young man, clearly. And I want to understand from you, because you're saying that all arguments for God fail. That's a big claim. That's a big claim, right?
Yeah.
So I want to understand how you've arrived at it. Tell me how you've arrived at this. What's the strongest argument in your opinion, or how you've disproved them all? The floor is yours, Fahad. Tell us how you've arrived at this. Convince me of your position. Help me to become whatever you are.
Firstly, you said something about hyperskepticism. I think so. You're implying that the logic that I use in my regular life, I'm sort of being skeptical of it when it comes to God, right? I think that's what you're implying. But I think that's completely false.
I'm implying a lack of consistency.
Yeah, lack of consistency. So I would say that's completely false. And if you want to prove it, then you should show the inconsistency. Like, what argument am I being inconsistent on?
So this is what. So this is when I was talking about this, I was saying that when I come across these arguments, this is what I find. So if you want to get upset about the fact that I think that if you want to get upset about the fact that I think you're inconsistent, I do, based on my experience of talking to other people. Now, what would be useful to do, if you want to move the question forward, rather than prove to me that I'm inconsistent, then, because this is not very useful for us to have a discussion about this. Give me good reasons to accept your position.
But Dr. Imran, if you're going to make a claim, you have to prove it, right?
So you've made the claim that you've looked at all arguments for God and you found them failing. So please present your evidence.
I'll present your best argument. I'll present the best objection.
No, that's not
I
how
can't
it works.
list all of the arguments.
No. So I would say to you that if you're making a claim, then you present your arguments against the claims that you're making. So you've said that I've looked at all of the arguments and they're all false. Yes?
Well, obviously not all of them, but all of the ones I've heard.
So you've not looked at all the arguments. Is that what you're saying now?
Yeah, but new arguments come every day, so that's impossible.
Okay, so you've looked at all the ones up to date. Say the last year. Let's give you a year gap of taking a break from your research.
Most of the popular ones, yeah. Most of the, yeah.
You've looked at all the popular arguments, and you find all the popular arguments fail. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, which popular arguments have you looked at?
The one we were just necessary contingency argument.
Is that the one you found the strongest put forward? Which is the one that you had the most difficulty in coming to the conclusion that it was false? Which one was the strongest one?
Well, for me, I don't look at it in strongness, because I don't think strong. But what I do look at is what other Muslims find the most convincing. So in my experience, the most convincing that Muslims find is the contingency argument. That's why I focus on it the most. And I don't think it succeeds.
Okay, so what you're doing is you're saying that because you're arguing from your position, but actually you're arguing from other positions. You're saying that actually you've done the research and you found them to be failing. And when you say which one is the most sound argument that you come across, you say that actually the one that I don't think of it in that way. And I said, okay, present the one that you had the most difficulty refuting, and you just say that I presented what other people find convincing. I don't find my basis for believing in God, although the contingency argument is a useful thing, is not that. I think it's intuitive. I've never had a doubt that God exists. It doesn't make sense to me. It's never entered into my sphere of reasonable positions. And everything that everyone's ever presented, all that atheists can do is, to me, so far in any discussions that I've had, is, I'm not sure I don't think it quite gets to where I need it to go. Or they bring positions that don't make sense. So you've brought this mechanistic eternal thing, and we can and I want to sort of try to get to the bottom of some of this. So all I was asking you to do was to present. Now you said that you've the ones that you've come across that were the most popular, you're presenting the one that you think the Muslims find most appealing. This is completely baseless. Most Muslims in the world couldn't give a monkeys about the contingency argument. They couldn't care less. Yeah. In fact, it's only a malaise. This is only an illness, a psychological weakness of those people who have gone through intellectual studies in usually Western influenced societies, where they come from this philosophical solipsism, where everything has to be philosophically grounded and move forward. This is not the reality of how the world works. This is just a small minority. So if you come with this idea that this is what most people think is convincing that God exists, then you're already wasting your energy and your efforts, because that's not the case. You're working on a straw man. Now, it would be useful for you to present to me. So this is why I asked you, tell me what convinced you to arrive at your position of this. So you won't have an argument. So you want to stick with the contingency argument. No problem. I'm happy to go forward with this. You tell me what led you to this conclusion that you've come up with, that there is only a mechanistic thing that's eternal. I would like to understand your rationale and thinking about this.
Okay, you said a lot of things.
Yes.
But I just want to mention something about intuition. I mean, thing with intuition, okay, one person says I have the intuition that God exists, and then another person says, okay, I don't have the intuition. Then the conversation is that you can't. I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to accuse him of lying? That I don't have the intuition.
No. Here we go. So what you're saying, what you're saying. So what I'm telling you, that I have a position. My personal position is that God is self-evident. It doesn't need to be proven that God exists. There is no other reasonable explanation. The only thing that you can bring is doubt and uncertainty. And this is really what I'm getting. So what I really would like you to do, so if you want to, so the vast majority of humanity, 99.9% throughout the history of the world, this world that we live in, the humans have existed, are theistic. The odd ones out, the minority, the exception to the rule, the illness, the ones who are the word mulhid, military means who off the straight path, the people who have gone the wrong way. And I reiterate the modern malaise of over-intellectualization, particularly with Western influence. These are the people who are lost in this solipsism, in this philosophical mire, and they end up with nothing. They come out with only conjecture. The only position that the people end up in, well, I'm not certain. Okay, all right, that's fine. But that's not going to convince. Your uncertainty has no impact on the reality of things. Do you understand? If you go and stand in front of a lion in the jungle and you can be uncertain about his existence, when he chews your head off, you know that the lion exists at that point. So your uncertainty doesn't affect reality. So the question, again, I would come to is, so again, the intuition thing is not, your point does not stand. So the question comes again, how did you arrive at your position of an eternal mechanistic thing from the argument of contingency? Explain that process to me so I can understand.
Dr. Rob, you say a lot of things and then you end up with like one question. But I don't understand. Like, do you want me to just answer the question, or do you want me to address everything?
What did I say to you that you think needs answering?
Well, you say things that I don't think make sense. Like you just said something about intuition, and then you said that my position doesn't stand about it. How does that make sense? Like, what are you trying to say?
So you said to me that one person's intuition may be different from another person's intuition.
Yeah. But why did you say that my position doesn't stand? What does that mean?
So I said to you that the vast majority of the people of humanity, from the beginning of humans to now, have been theistic. The vast majority of them, 99.9%. This the aberration that we're seeing, this modern malaise that we're seeing, is a result of particularly Western Enlightenment thinking. And because this is how the things are taught now, there's a scientism being taught, that science is the only way to know truth. This has affected a lot of the people in many parts of the world, and in the West as well, the youth. and so they end up questioning things that are pretty straightforward, and all they can get to, and this is the only thing they can get to is a conjecturous position. I'm not sure. Okay. Now, if you want to answer any of that, feel free ahead. But I want you to present. So I don't really want to go around in circles with you, because this is what we're doing now, because you're avoiding having that discussion that I'm asking you about. And so again, I come to my question that I always ask at the end of my long speech to you. That question is, tell me how you've arrived at your position for a mechanistic eternal thing that brought about a temporal universe. Please.
Yeah, just to be clear once again, I'm not making a positive claim that a mechanistic thing exists for certain. I'm saying this is one of the options along with God, but there is no reason to choose one over the other.
This is exactly. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So Fahad, great. Thank you for agreeing that your position is conjecturous and it's not the only option available logically. So what are you offering me, Fahad? And this is what I said to you, that you're going to offer me at the end of it. You're going to offer me uncertainty. Well, all you're saying to me, Fahad, is I don't know. It could be this. It could be this.
Yeah, but here's the thing. In Islam, you make the claim that the people who don't believe in God, they're wrong. So that's what I have to challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So if
absolutely.
Yeah,
so
if
the question for you, and you don't, Fahad, you don't disagree with me. You haven't disagreed with me. You've said that there could be God. No, you've said there could be God, and there couldn't, and also God could not be. But you're not able to make up your mind.
Well, I'm also saying that it's unreasonable to claim certainty on God.
Okay, so now you're making a claim that this is exactly what we're getting to. So now you're making the claim, and I want you to, and this is why I said to you now, we come back to my question that I was asking you. How have you arrived at your conclusion? Because now you're saying that actually no, it's unreasonable to think that God exists, because now you're nailing your mast, isn't it?
No. You keep strawmanning me. You have to be careful with the words you're using, Dr. Imran. I'm not saying that you're saying that I'm making a claim that believing in God is wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying claiming certainty about God is wrong.
Okay, so that's fine.
You have to be careful.
You're not. Yeah, that's fine.
I think, Doctor,
exactly the point I was making right from the beginning.
I think, Desi Munda, you need to first of all talk about what do you mean by certainty.
No, Abbas, he doesn't need to talk about.
No, because are you saying 100%? Are you saying balance of probability? What are you arguing here?
Exactly? Balance of probability, yeah, balance of probability.
Yeah.
So you think the balance of probability of it just being a necessary existence that basically isn't intelligent, isn't conscious, doesn't decide to bring things into existence is just as plausible as an intelligent being deciding when things happen and how they come into existence and fashioning them accordingly. You think that both of those probabilities are just equal, do you?
Yep. Do you disagree?
So you think they're equal, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So and you're basing that on saying that you haven't really studied the Qur'an because you don't understand Arabic, and the miracles that you have been given of the Qur'an.
What does that have to do with the Quran?
No, Abbas, sorry, one second. So Fahad, so what all of you said is that you're not certain about anything, which is exactly.
I'm not certain about God. I'm certain about a lot of things.
No.
You said keep strawmanning me. Like, what's going on? I don't understand.
Fahad, you need to just relax. Yeah, we're trying to have a conversation. Using the word straw man over and over again doesn't make it anything a straw man. Do you understand? You said that you believe that God. You're not certain that God exists. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. You have no position on which is the correct position to be in. You're just uncertain that God exists. Yeah. It could be either or the other.
My position is that theists who claim certainty about God are being unreasonable.
Okay, so I want you to present this. This is the thing I was asking you from the beginning. So I'll come back to my same question. And this is the last time I'm going to ask you, Fahad. It's been lovely talking to you to a certain extent. The last time I'll ask you the same question I've asked you, because you're making the claim that it's unreasonable to claim certainty about the existence of God. So now I want you to establish for me the position that you have from arriving at this position. Like, how did you get to this?
Yeah, my
How did you
position
get to
is simple. If there's sound logical argument for the existence of God, then a reasonable and sincere person is not going to accept him. That's my argument. So there's no sound and logical argument for God. So I'm not going to accept him.
So your second premise is the problem. You have to show
Okay,
that there
why?
are no sound and reasonable arguments for God.
Okay, when somebody makes a
please,
claim about the
please, no. You're making the claim. This is your argument. You presented it.
Yeah.
You said if there are no sound and reasonable arguments for God, then it's not reasonable to believe in God. And you said there are no sound and reasonable. This is your premises you're making. So I disagree with your second premise. So please establish the evidence for your second premise, please.
Yeah, if no one is presenting an argument, so how can I? What evidence do you want me to bring?
No,
that's
Mahesh,
how it works, bro.
No, Mahesh. This is the thing.
What, Mahesh?
The argument. Sorry, you remind me of him. So the name came up. So Fahad, I apologies for calling you Mahesh. So Fahad, the issue here is, you've said that the arguments that are available for the existence of God, because this is what you've been talking about. Now you're saying there are no arguments being made.
Yep. No, I'm saying no sound and logical arguments are being presented.
No arguments being made.
No sound and argument is being made for God.
Okay, now you have to establish that. So you're talking about, this is why, again, I'm coming back to, so I'm not.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Imran.
I think we'll have to move forward. I'm going to ask you the question again.
Yeah.
You said, no, hang on a sec, 1 second, Fahad. You said that there is, you've arrived at the conclusion that the mechanism, that there could be an existence that is necessary, that is mechanistic. It's a possibility for you. Okay. Now I want you to tell me how you've arrived at that. Now, if you can't, then I'm going to say, have a great time. Come back again, and we'll have another discussion again. When you're able to put some evidence forward for the position that you hold. Assalamu alaikum, Ijaz. How are you doing? You okay?
Wa alaikum assalam, guys. Decided to join.
Oh,
is my audio fine?
Is
my audio fine?
Absolutely fine. Alhamdulillah.
Okay. I'm going to listen to Uncle. I just want to say, Potter out. Todd Burley needs to kick Potter out of Chelsea Football Club. Thank you.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So please, Fahad, go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Imran, how do you think a burden of proof works about the non-existence of something? Can you explain that?
No, because you're not making a burden. I'm not giving you a burden of proof for the non-existence of something.
You're not giving me a burden of proof?
I'm giving you the burden of proof to establish that the argument from the contingency which you presented leads to the conclusion of a mechanistic necessary being.
Oh, no, it doesn't.
Bring about...
You're doing it again. You're doing it again.
Do you not understand? Do you not understand? So I'll repeat it.
You don't understand, Doctor.
Okay,
sorry
no
to
problem.
say.
Thank you very much for coming on. We really appreciate you. Okay, next time you come on, please try and if you're going to make a claim about arguments and why they're false, you need to.
You don't have any argument.
Okay, you know what, Imran. You know what?
Can I just one thing?
One second. So, Fahad, please do me a favor. Just before you leave, I want you to say the classic things that people say. You didn't give me time to speak. That's one thing that people say. The other thing that people often say is that, oh, you don't have any arguments. The third thing that people say is, oh, I smashed you. Or I've refuted you.
Or, it was 5-on-1, 6-on-1.
Please say all these things so that we can get through that, because we really need to grow up and have conversations.
I'll just say
one very, very quickly, inshallah.
The thing what I think Brother Fahad is not getting is that when you but the contingency argument claims that it cannot be a mechanical force. So if you object to that, you're basically saying that the contingency argument is not rational, or it's not a sound argument, because the contingency argument says
it's not sound.
It's in two stages, and that the second stage of the argument is that the necessary being has to be a conscious personal agent.
Yeah, I agree with stage one, not stage.
So yeah, but this is part of the argument. So the theists don't want to just make the contingency argument just to say that there is a mechanical force, obviously. So basically, what Dr. Imran was telling you, you're making a positive claim that this argument is unsound, and you need to bring evidence for this positive claim. And you've been just strawmanning me. No, you're making the argument that this argument is unsound. He was not strawmanning you. Are you
he was. He said that I'm claiming.
Are you positive?
No, Irfan,
burden
look,
of proof.
You have to set the record straight, bro.
I'm going to teach you how burden of proof works, because you wanted to teach us, right? When you make, are you making the claim? Are you making the claim that the contingency argument got it wrong by describing the necessary being as a personal agent?
Yes.
So please bring the burden of proof, because you're making the claim. But I don't know if the brothers want to entertain this, but this is what Dr. Imran wanted to tell you. Maybe you can prepare it for next time. But yeah, I just wanted to make it clear that the burden of proof is on you and why it is on you, and that you're making a positive claim.
Yeah, but what's your premise for proving it's a... Because you guys tried the mechanistic...
You know that if you know the argument is wrong, that means you studied the argument and you know the details of it. Why are you asking me what's the premise?
Yeah, but Brother Irfan,
you can't, at one hand, okay, Fahad, sorry, but we're going to have to end this because there are people waiting who have...
Then the premise,
so the problem here is, and I'm going to repeat it for you, is that if you say that something is unsound, asking you for the reasons why you think it is not unreasonable to do. And if you don't want to answer that question, just say, I don't want to answer this question. And, we can move on. So when you have some certainty, or you're willing to answer the questions on why you think something is unsound, then that's fine. Otherwise, we wish you all the best.
Well, you guys tried the necessitating effect argument, and I showed why that fails. And then
you haven't. You haven't shown anything at all.
Which is why we want.
Sorry, what? I didn't give you. I want to hear the. I didn't give you enough time. Was that the one you were saying?
No, you gave me enough time.
Okay, great. Okay, we wish you all the best then. Take care. All the best. Take care.
Sure.
Okay, I mean, I find it really difficult to follow these arguments, because to say something is equally probabilistic, a universe simply coming out of a necessary existence, non-conscious, non-intelligent, doesn't design things just basically somehow, and I think you raised a very important point. The necessary existence is eternal, therefore it possesses the properties, whatever those properties are, to effectively give birth to this universe, to create this universe, or this universe can come out of it, or however you want to put it. Yet that effect is not eternal. But then we mustn't talk about time. We mustn't talk about time, because the universe at t equals 0 is 0 time. Therefore, we can't talk about time. But this effect was eternal. So it's older than 13.8 billion years, right? Because that's eternal is more than 13.8 billion years. Is that right, guys? Have I got that wrong?
I just want to say something general. So there is this... So there is this phenomena happening, particularly amongst the youth, and Allah protect them from this. Is that the West is a culturally hegemonic power. So what that means is that the Western culture is pervaded throughout the world, really. And one of the effects of this, we've taken on the way of schooling that the West have also, and that's really based upon the Enlightenment, secularist, and this is when really atheism was, being talked about and being made the way that you go about explaining the universe. So the scientism type of thing, and this is it's become ingrained now that you go along this sort of uncertainty type of route, that everything has to have some sort of always have to start from a place of not knowing and then moving forward. And the problem with this is if you deny anything about everything, then what you end up with is uncertainty, and this is really what's happening. And what people need to do is actually that it doesn't make sense. So, for example, the reason that I wanted him to explain the argument is that if you have a mechanism, then any arbitrary limits on a thing, like a mechanism. This is something that has arbitrary limits that make it work the way it does. You need to explain where those limits came from. So that requires an explanation. So that thing no longer becomes the necessary foundational thing, because by definition, everything that's necessary and foundational does not require an explanation, and arbitrary limits do. Why is this this shape? I've got to explain that. I can't just say this is a necessary thing and then this got its limits here, and I need to explain the limits. So if you're going to make a mechanism, you've got to explain how that mechanism came about. And this begs the question of, okay, well, what about that? Why there's arbitrary limits there? And that was sort of missing. It's just a way of positing the universe creating necessary thing without saying, okay, why is this thing a universe creating necessary thing? How did it get only this property? Why not any other properties or whatever? But the conversation didn't even happen, because it was just the automatic assumption of many atheists is we're going to be like, sit back and we're going to let you have the argument. No, you need to come forward and give us why your position is anything I should think about. But anyway, I'll leave it at
that's
that.
Great. Let's get Rob on. Rob, been waiting for quite a long time. Ijaz, I'd like you to respond to Rob, as you've not said anything yet other than just salam. Rob, welcome to the stream.
Hey guys,
how you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's an early Australian morning for me.
Lovely. So, Rob, please go straight into it. Let's hear something that you have to say. Ijaz, I'd like you to respond, inshallah, to start with.
Well, I don't really have a particular topic though. So, I mean.
Well, have you come on the stream?
I suppose my reaction would be based on the discussion that you just had with that Hindu with respect to Imran, because I mean, when you're bringing up this notion that the universe is 13.79 billion years old, humans are around 200,000, 300,000 years old, then you take into account the so-called 99.9% of humans are spiritual, theistic. So then his reaction, I think, is very normal. I'm speaking here as an ex-atheist. Like it's a very normal reaction to doubt that, in this case, say Islam is, like, if you narrow it down, Islam becomes this only true thing out of everything. And so then, based on our prior discussions and streams, the more I've been investigating the Quran, for example, the more I'm noticing that a lot of the stories that appear in the Quran are not unique to the Quran, but at the same time, they're not from the biblical canon either. And so, and in fact, this is why, like, I'm coming on because, for example, Nizam here has privately messaged me his response. And he, as far as I understand, he says he's not, he's fine with, there's no problem for him that these stories overlap with Apocrypha, Gnostic sources, and so on. But for me, this is where it becomes quite ironic, because you go down the vast sort of like statistical approach with, the universe is so old and humans are also so old and so vast and everyone's been spiritual. And then, to be honest, Imran, I do disagree with you on your perspective on Western society and Western science and how that has brought about the so-called Enlightenment, which is thoroughly religious. Wasn't secular at all. But based on all that information, me as a Westerner and also as a scientist, I'm in the field of astrophysics, my reaction is, this is ergo furthermore the reason why I'm not convinced of Islam when I use that empirical approach with respect to the Quran. So that's basically my reaction to the discussion.
Okay, Ijaz, did you hear that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, Ijaz, maybe you need to turn your video off, because I think your internet connection is weak. But yeah, hopefully it might work better. No, your sound's really bad suddenly now. That's a shame.
Oh, okay.
just come out and come back in again. I think come back in again, inshallah. Doctor, do you want to respond?
Yes, please. Yeah. So, Rob, welcome. I don't know. You seem to have taken an argument that we're having about the existence of God and made it into an argument about whether Islam is true or not. I don't know how you managed to do that. We weren't arguing.
If I'm psychologizing,
we weren't arguing for the truth of Islam. We were arguing for the existence of God, and then you sort of conflated the two. So I don't really understand. So explain to me what it is that you're objecting to, and we can maybe try and have a conversation.
Yeah. So if I'm psychologizing the thought process of where that Hindu was going. I mean, he's a Hindu in the sense, maybe some sort of cultural heritage. I was born in India myself. So I'm thankful for being, compared to, and I have to agree, compared to a lot of present day young, naive people who may not be multicultured, compared to, say, everyone on this panel right now. So I'm thankful for being multicultural in that sense, to have a certain humility and a certain open-mindedness on, look, there are other people that have other perspectives and other experiences and other beliefs. And maybe there is some truths to some of those beliefs. There's nothing wrong in in fact it fits with the anthropological evolutionary data of human migration, language, like when languages change and distribute, and then superstitions arise because of certain geographical features, and like China is China and Japan is Japan and India is India. So I'm psychologizing the conversation that if you were to establish this, the single origin of the universe, and then ultimately it's to do with God and so on, as a Muslim, you're basically then going down that pathway with respect to the Quran and its Allah and Muhammad. And I'm at the back channel listening to this going, okay, so since I'm on here and you're asking me to raise an issue, so this is my issue, and that is to piggyback on that discussion. If then that Hindu was informed about my criticisms of the Quran, are those criticisms valid in your eyes?
Okay, so
those apocrypha.
Thanks, Rob.
So
Rob,
so on. Yeah.
Apologies for interjecting. So what you're saying is that there wasn't a discussion that we were having that you have a problem with, but you have the problem with something else that you would raise about Islam later on, where this conversation may have potentially gone, that would make you raise the points.
Yeah, if we were all seated in chairs, in a library room, having a discussion, put all the religions together, even the so-called secular folk, like we are all seated in a room and we're sharing our thoughts. And now you as a Muslim, you're going to obviously raise arguments contrary to practically 99% of the other room.
So I talk because you came in and you said.
Nope.
Imran, you're muted for some reason. You've just gone into Imran. You're just muted for some reason. Just unmute yourself. No, still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
I accidentally unplugged my mic. So, the thing is, Rob, you came into the room, and what you did was you said that reflecting on the conversation, and then you talked about Islam. The conversation we had was nothing to do with Islam. What it was to do with just the existence of God as a basic setting, irrespective of the type of religion you follow. That's a secondary or tertiary question.
Yep.
You then agreed, actually, you said that I was thinking where the conversation may go, and then I would raise issues about Islam. So I don't think that personally doesn't sound like a reflection of the conversation. So why don't you raise your objection about Islam, and maybe we can talk about them, because I think that's what you want to do. The other thing is that I understand that you've raised, and I could be wrong because this is secondary and I'm clarifying, that you've raised the issue with some people that you think that we are hiding things about Islam. And if that's the case, I'd really like you to tell us what you think we're hiding on this channel when we have our streams. I think that's very important to do. So either of those two things, whatever you would like to do. I think the second thing is probably more, if you can accept, if you can say, yes, I said that, or I don't remember saying that, that's fine. And then we can move on to the first part of the conversation. But either of those two things would be great. What would you like to do?
Yeah, I'll go from the back, from the last point back. So as far as like me saying that Muslims hide things, unless you can quote me verbatim somewhere in some live stream or some writing somewhere that I'm psychologizing all Muslims as doing that. No, I don't make that assertion. We've had very cordial discussions in the past, and I thoroughly enjoy them. I suppose the reason why I'm on right now is because you had a guest on last time, and I just happened to catch him live, and he's a fellow Australian. Nizam reached out to me.
Rob, brother, with all due respect, yeah, we're sort of going into lots of territories which are specifically, you think that the Qur'an is something you can't believe in because you have reasons as to why you can't believe.
Yeah. I'm going to get to that.
So, so if you don't mind, let's get straight. Let's get straight to that.
So basically, don't psychologize whatever I said about Muslims or my motives and so on. My motives are completely innocent, and
that's absolutely fine. That's fine, Rob. Thank you for.
There's nothing wrong with me being here, and
I have no. You're welcome.
I have no, nefarious reasons to be here. I'm just here
Rob,
because you're live.
To be fair, Rob, on face value, as what you've said, I'd accept what you've said. But recently, for example, I saw you on a stream. Now, maybe you were just invited on that stream. Maybe it wasn't something you'd planned. Maybe it was something that you didn't know who the other guests were going to be on. But there was David Wood on that stream. There was Hatun on that stream. Now, I think you would perhaps agree that those people are hardly respectful and decent in their relations with Muslims. And I certainly would not share a stream with somebody that I knew specifically was very disrespectful, dishonorable, vulgar at times in language and speech towards other people and other religions. But you were on that stream, right? So I don't want to say.
Just to clarify, I was on that stream thinking it was an apologetic stream. So I thought it was going to be a stream of answering apologetic questions, not Muslim bashing and Quran bashing.
I understand. But you can understand.
I came in very late at the stream, and I didn't really interact much.
And I respect that. But you can understand where perhaps when people see that, like I saw that, perhaps there could be an air of suspicion. Like, is Rob's intentions really, as gentle, as noble as perhaps he makes it out to be? But look, it doesn't matter. You've clarified that. That's fine. Let's get straight into it. What is it about the Quran? Because you said that there is apocrypha writings, for example, in the Quran, writings that supposedly are copied from incorrect statements or records previously. Is that what you're claiming?
No, so this is something that I've been thinking about quite carefully for the last, say, 2 months, or whenever I first brought this up initially, 2-3 months ago, whenever I came on this show, and since then I've been a very careful reader of what you would call Orientalist scholarship. So Gabriel Reynolds, for example, his scholarship in regards to whatever biblical characters appear in the Quran, to then correlate them with the biblical text. So my thought experiment is if I take chronologically Adam to Jesus in the Bible, but I pretend I have no Bible to work with. The thought experiment is I want to develop a Bible through the lens of the Quran. So the Quran is my filter. So when I go from Adam to Jesus in the Quran, and then say I magically or mysteriously happen to find a Bible to then make that comparison, I find that there's no correlation. So the Adam of the Quran does not meet with the Adam of Genesis. The Moses of the Quran does not meet the Moses of Exodus. All the way down to Jesus. They're completely unique or separate. So then my next question is, well, why? And is the Quran, and obviously the Muslim claim is the Quran comes directly from Allah. But then if I put aside the divine claim, and I just look at it from a humanistic or human point of view, that say the Quran was written by a human, then I see that it has direct correlations with human works in the first 5 centuries of the Common Era. And ergo, I have to wonder, is that the Bible that the author of the Quran presumes, not the Bible that Christians and Jews, well, in this case, the Hebrew canon for Jews and say most of the Protestant canon for the Christians. It's most of the deuterocanonical texts that then seem to overlap into the Quran, not so much the Protestant canon and the Hebrew canon.
Okay, Dr. Imran.
So that's my discovery so far, yeah.
Right. Okay. Dr. Imran, do you want to start
with a wonderful thought experiment? Well, I mean, that's a really strangely constructed way of analyzing anything. But Nazim, I would like you to give your thoughts, and then I'll wade in here, because just, I mean, I'll be honest with you, this is very esoteric.
I mean, I can give an example. I can give some examples.
Yeah, there's lots of examples. I mean, this is sort of Quran borrowing argument, which is sort of at least a century old, if not more, from the Orientalists, for Tisdale or whoever you want to quote.
And
1903 we're
exactly.
talking about, and it's, I mean, really, if that's where we're going with this, my question is it really worth engaging with this sort of stuff? But Nazim, why don't you have a bit of an interlocking with Rob on this borrowing argument, and then I'll have an interaction, hopefully.
Yes, so hi Rob. Yes, so the history and the nature of the Quran is that the Quran doesn't come in a vacuum, but there's historical beliefs, as well as the Quran is revealed in a polemical environment where Jews and Christians are debating one another, and so the Quran takes a stance like in some of these debates that Jews and Christians were having. So yeah, there will be similarities, there will be some overlap and differences, just like there's similarities as well with the Bible. So the Bible may have similarities with the Gilgamesh, like the Ten Commandments and the story of the flood. You also find them in like other civilizations and other cultures as well. So Muslims' answer tends to be is that God sent prophets to every nation, to every people, and some of these prophets came and repeated the same stories in order to drive the moral lessons from these particular stories. And hence you will find variations of these stories in other civilizations and cultures. And we believe the Quran to be the pristine word of God. The Quran says in chapter 10, verse, I think it's 91 or 94, to the effect that verily this is the truth which God has revealed unto the prophet. So then the Quran says that if you doubt what we've revealed unto you, then ask those that have been reading the scripture before thee, and be not among of the doubters. And what's interesting is that the context of this verse, it appears after the Quran has narrated the story of the Israelites escaping slavery from Egypt, as well as I believe in the flood story is also mentioned as well. So within that context, the Quran is saying that that if you doubt what we have revealed unto you, then ask those that have been reading the scriptures before you. So in other words, the Quran is acknowledging that there were prophets, messengers before the Prophet Muhammad, and there were scriptures before the Quran as well. And the people of the book, the people of the scriptures, will be able to confirm at least the basic outlines of these narrations. And the Quran is simply taking the moral lessons, the eternal truth from these particular stories, in order to make a polemical or philological point. I think this is a view that Gabriel Reynolds takes as well. He has an interesting book which he edited, I believe. It's called The Quran and the Biblical Subtext. But yeah, all of these kind of apocryphal stories as well, you'll find in manuscript form, they date 400 to 500 years after Islam. So some try to argue that it's possible that from a secular Western point of view, that these stories may have originated from the Quran, or that the Quran is the source of these particular stories. That's another way of looking at it. But yeah, even like in the Bible, we have like, you know, so-called apocryphal stories as well, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And I gave the example like of the, you know, the Ten Commandments and the flood stories found in other civilizations and cultures. But purely from like a philological perspective, like Muslims wouldn't outwardly dismiss them and just try to say that these were simply copied or borrowed from previous civilizations. But we would understand that maybe at one point in time, these were stories that were revealed by God to a particular prophet and then passed down by subsequent generations. But you know, the letter of Jude, it quotes from the book of Enoch about some particular prophecy. But what's interesting is the book of Enoch has a different theology from the book of Jude, for example. So in the book of Enoch, the Son of Man is identified with Enoch, whereas the New Testament identifies generally the Son of Man as being Jesus himself. And also other scholars have also pointed out, like, is it James Barr? He points out, like in his book, Escaping from Fundamentalism, that it's possible that when it comes to the canon of the Bible, that the New Testament writers had a different canon or a different list of books than the ones that we consider canonical, because they seem to cite or allude to books which are no longer part of today's canon, but at the same time, they also exclude books such as the Song of Songs, or I think maybe Ezekiel as well. They're not mentioned or cited or alluded to like in the New Testament, but they're included in today's canon. So even when it comes to the canon, there is some fuzziness around the edges. Sorry for that long answer. It was a bit
no, that's fine. That's fine. I'm tracking with you on that. Yeah, but so my response to that is that, like, let's go from, say, Enoch back. So Enoch, like I'm part of the Enoch seminar, so the Second Temple seminar. So James Charlesworth and Stucken. I always mispronounce his name. Stuckenbrook or something, I think his name is. But those guys are like the guys with respect to Enoch. Enoch is a fantastic piece of literature that actually is important for bridging in a literary context, bridging what technically is lost from that exilic period in the Babylonian cuneiform period, because there's this gap of knowledge, and it just so happens that Jewish intertestamental literature is able to bridge into these mythologies of Babylon. So Enoch is that vital bridge, and they've concluded that in that particular chapter, in chapter 47, when you're saying that Enoch could be the Son of Man himself, that's actually debated. Like, they've gone back and forth on that. The consensus now, since 2005, is that there's a high possibility that Daniel 7 was actually used by the author of Enoch, which means, critical scholarship will put Daniel late in the Maccabean period, but at least with respect to this chapter, this is pre-3rd century, potentially. And so therefore the Son of Man figure in Daniel 7 follows the Baal cycle, and therefore the Son of Man and Enoch cannot be equated with Enoch. The Son of Man is a distinct figure. So I just want to point that out. And so then that going into, say, the Pentateuch and its reliance on the Gilgamesh epic and the Atrahasis epic and the Sumerian legends and the Hammurabi, the Code of Hammurabi for the Ten Commandments. It's curious that the Bible nowhere has this assertion to be like, hey, go and check out the past texts of the past authors or whoever. Nowhere between Genesis and Revelation do you have this go and verify with the past. Rather, it's like this cultural milieu and a cultural memory that continues this message. So in other words, I require something like the Code of Hammurabi to exist so that I can make sense of the Ten Commandments, because I don't see the Bible as falling out of the sky. Like, I see it as a genuinely human work. So you see, this is so if I put myself in your shoes, I'm thinking about this with all this background knowledge that you've just shared. I have no issue with the Bible having that that background context. But I obviously will have an issue with a holy text that claims to be uniquely from God, in this case for you, Allah, that should have no correlation to something that comes in the past. Otherwise, I'll have to conclude that Allah is like a, he cherry picks. Okay, that's right, that's not right with respect to what's come in the past. Like kind of like what you're saying, prophets in the past. So then when I go and look for those prophets of the past, I only happen to find writings within the first 5 centuries prior to the Qur'an in the Common Era. I don't find anything in the BC period. I find the stories that I see of Adam all the way to Jesus, they only occur in the first 5 centuries. So,
Rob,
why is that the case?
Rob, I mean, to sort of try to understand your contention, because you raised a scholar and then you said something very interesting. If I take the Quran not to be from God, then any similarity I find has to be basically copied from the previous scriptures or previous texts.
I'm not saying has to. I'm just noticing
that's the only logical. That's the only logical conclusion you can arrive at, unless you say that, right?
Well, again, if you're talking about scientific humility, you don't make an absolute.
Well, when I say absolute, there are no other viable options.
For now, yes,
right.
There's no other viable options. Yeah.
But actually, you've also made the opposite claim at the same time. So you've also said that if if this book were to fall out of the sky, if God were to reveal this book, then I must assume that God is cherry picking these things and saying right and wrong. This is right.
Yeah, but I'm saying that in a cautionary sense. I'm not making an absolute, statement or conclusion on the matter.
I agree, you don't make absolute, but you understand that you're making the opposite argument. So
but I'm saying that in the context of your theology, though.
No. So you have to understand that we're trying to understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And what you're saying, and if you're saying that I'm trying to come from the context of, so our theology is very straightforward. From the time of the prophet Adam, peace be upon him, the first human being, to now, their revelation has been with the prophets, and the message has been the same: worship God alone without partners. Messengers have been sent to their people, their message has been corrupted, and prophets have come to bring people back onto the path. This has been there's not one specific ethnic group of people who the prophets were sent to. They were sent to every single people, which is the only just and right thing to do, preaching the same message. Salvation comes, you want salvation, you have sins to be forgiven, you seek repentance, your sin will be forgiven, worship God alone without partners. And then there's a final messenger who has to be final in the sense that it will be near the time of judgment. So it has to be one that's final, peace be upon them all. And that message of that final messenger, because there will not be anyone after them, is different in that it addresses all of mankind as opposed to a specific ethnic group of people, and it's preserved. Now, what that message would do is it would, because it's a criterion, because it's bringing all of the world back to the right path, it's going to address the errors that people have made, and it's going to correct people and bring them back to, as Brother Nazim was saying, exactly this point, that it's refuting the falsities that people have come with. Do not say 3. Don't you say that didn't you see that he ate food? Very basic things for you to understand that this contingent thing you're seeing in front of you that's weak and fallible is not the creator. Now, bringing people back to the worship of God alone without partners, the God of Abraham, the God of Moses. You keep making this distinction in your words between the God of Islam, Allah, and it's like because the people who are not Muslims hearing this, it's going to sound to them like this is something foreign. But in the Semitic languages, this is how you would call God. So even in and you know this yourself. So Muslims believe in the God of Abraham. When Jesus, according to the narrative, and was putting his forehead on the floor and praying to be saved from the cross, he was praying to Allah. Now, we don't believe that Jesus was worshipping a different creator. We don't believe Moses was worshipping a different creator. And it's interesting for me that you also refer back to other other historical things. So you're saying you're saying the Bible does it. Yes, the Bible takes from the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Bible takes from all of these other where the Ten Commandments from. You're saying the Bible does it, but it's okay for us. It's okay for us because
I'm allowing the Bible to be what it is.
Yeah,
I'm completely fine with it.
Absolutely. So you're saying, look, it's a human thing, and humans, they copy each other, and that's okay. Yeah. And to me, none of this follows. Really, I'm just not seeing how any of this follows. It sounds very intellectual. It sounds very, well thought through. Your wonderful thought experiment that you did. I just don't see why it's relevant. Why is it a
just quickly notice that when you laid out the belief that from Adam all the way down, these prophets that have come through, and there's this particular belief, Allah, there's no association with him, and it's basically thoroughly monotheistic, like the whole concept of Tawheed. Notice this it's a presumption, let's just, because I could say things, I'm making presumptions about the past, but I'm doing it through a certain lens, okay? You're doing it through the lens of what happens to be in your hands, what you believe to be the only true final revelation. You don't have, say, the past to sort of actually do that verification to be like, okay, see, look, it's the final revelation, but look, it challenges me to look to the past, and then when I do look to the past, see that there's a corroboration. But you can't do that, is what I'm saying. And so therefore, to assume that there's this Adam that's teaching Tawheed in a proto-Ugaritic Sumerian culture, because Hebrew didn't exist. I mean, if you're talking about a Semitic culture as a whole, right? Hebrew, Aramaic, then finally, Arabic, Syriac, like all these languages are you're looking at this anachronistically, in other words.
So I mean, even with this explanation, I mean, I appreciate the explanation, but Adam, peace be upon him, was the first human. There was no culture when he was around, because he was literally the first man on earth. What culture would he be in? So even the things that you're taking your secular understanding of how religions developed and anthropology and all these things you've studied. You're a very studied individual, and I appreciate, which is very appreciated. But you're superimposing that understanding that you've taken from these sources, and you're trying to marry the things together. So there's your secular scientific mind, and then there's your religious mind, and you're trying to bring all of these things together to make some sort of coherence. And I don't think, for me, it doesn't work at all. When you say that the Quran tells you to look back at people in history, you have to sort of look at the verses, because there's many verses like this. I agree with you, but what is it that you're being asked to look for? What is it that you're being asked? What's the purpose of the looking? Now, and if you do that, then you'll understand that it's not asking you to go and verify this prophet existed or verify that prophet existed or the timeline of the prophet. No, it's asking you to usually it's asking you to look and see what's happened to the civilizations of the past. These powerful, these arrogant, these huge civilizations that denied God. What happened to them? They were wiped away. And often it's done in the sense of look at your difficulties that your current state. So whether it's talking about how the children of Israel were, in severe oppression, and how they came out of that. If you're now in the state of that similar oppression, you're feeling it in the world, then that will be for you. That will be a source of inspiration, a source of motivation, spiritual uplifting. And this is the whole point of it. It's not asking you to do a historical analysis. Now, even amongst all of the different anthropological arguments you can bring forward for multiple beliefs in multiple gods, I can look at that same data set and say, yeah, in every single civilization you come across, there is an ultimate being, irrespective of the demigods, the demi, whichever gods you can come up with, the man gods, the Hercules, Osiris, whoever we're thinking about manifestations of God on earth to save mankind from their trauma, Prometheus, whoever you want to think about. I'm sure you've read Prometheus Bound.
Just quickly, the moment you open the supernatural, then all these potentials of gods are possible. In this case, I would call them, say, demons, of lesser beings,
absolutely.
not the
So
ultimate true God.
the point here, though, is in even looking at that data set, there is an ultimate being. In any of these,
no, I agree with you on that. Yeah.
So then I can look at that same data set and say, yes, this correlates with my belief. How? Because there is an ultimate being, and everything else is below that ultimate being, and they're subject to that ultimate being. Now, that doesn't contradict, because the Quran says that there's an ultimate being, and then the message was corrupted, and people started worshipping either the very pious amongst them, or the jinn or Satan, and this is part of the narrative. So analyzing a data set and specifically saying that this is what it must correlate with, no. I mean, I look at the crucifixion. I understand the historical evidence that people present and the narrative presented in the New Testament, and I read what's in the Quran, and it perfectly correlates, because the Quran says, and it looked like Jesus was crucified, literally. And so I have no issues with the history.
But just to clarify, that statement, it looked like he was crucified, is verbatim, word for word, in a Gnostic text 2-3 centuries prior to the Quran.
So that's verification.
Only those two.
Sure.
No, but
so
that's 3 centuries after
the question,
the first century as well.
The question is, why is it wrong?
It's wrong because when Gnostic scholars, this is not me, this is those who specialized in the Nag Hammadi library, they will demonstrate that the Gnostic writer believed that Jesus was one of the aeons, one of the divine beings, and who could not imagine an aeon being crucified. So the Gnostic writer is actually he's ahistorical. He's making up a theological argument, just making this thing up, like, no, this guy, this Jew, was not physically killed. And that proto-Gnostic belief, you see this in the last books of the New Testament, like 1 John and the Gospel of John. They're tackling this proto-Gnostic belief.
What you're doing with this is you're underlying clarifying for me that where you're taking something that resembles something else, and you're assuming that this is the source. So does the Quran say that Jesus was a eon or anything like this, or he was some supernatural being?
Then I have to wonder.
No, we have to ask the question. Does it say that, or does it say he's a man, peace be upon him?
Yeah, but then his origins in the Quran is quite unique. Like, why have a virgin birth? What's the point of a virgin birth in Islamic theology?
Rob,
what about John, peace be upon him?
No, just quickly, I want to respond to the prior points you're making.
But you're missing the point. Now, this is Bas, 1 second, please.
Yeah,
this is really important. So what you're now doing is you're not looking at to claim copying or plagiarism, or whatever that is, from Gnostic sources. You have to explain how that would happen practically. I mean, how do you get access to those sources, etc.? That's a different thing entirely. But then you also have to look at the contradictions to the claim. And what you've done with the contradictions of the claim is, in your thought experiments, you've put them to the side and said, oh, well, there's other ways that Jesus could be looked at as being special, a virgin birth. That's God says in the Quran. Are you answering your question? The creation of Jesus is just like the creation of Adam. I said be, and he was. Literally the word be, and he was. So it's not it's special in what sense?
Why is Jesus uniquely given that privilege compared to all other humans in the Quranic context?
Do you think that makes him God?
Well, Christians would look at that and be like, yeah, because we have this
I just want to understand
pre-informed knowledge of the virgin birth theology, and yeah.
So being born from a virgin is the reason you believe someone to be God?
No. I'm not making that. What I'm saying is when you look at the Bible in its complete packaged form, right? The argument overall, and it pre-exists the Quran. So obviously Christians, if you're going to try and have an interfaith dialogue with Christians and then ultimately assert Islam to be the truth, Christians are going to have a big question mark, or they'll raise their eyebrow and be like, hang on, but Jesus is not. He's very similar here to me, with the virgin birth, and I already have this pre-knowledge of, like, Isaiah 9:6 and Isaiah 7:14, and then the New Testament's argument on that, and and that this virgin birth thing is to avoid a certain bloodline, the Jeconiah bloodline, because it's cursed, and like there's a whole packaged theology that is now with a bow wrapped up in a nice bow, and it's
But the problem with Rob now is that you're no longer doing your thought experiment. What you're doing is you're literally doing that, the cherry picking aspect of it. Because
no, I'm not.
If you want
this is why I want to respond to the other points you're making. So
sorry,
go finish your point. Yeah.
Oh no, please.
Yeah, well,
I don't want to say something and then I'll get
because I think I think the points you raised before is very good. In the sense that when you're starting with Adam, so because you're saying that I'm sticking with secular science and anthropology, and you're saying it's not a historical argument or historical investigation, or should not be that.
No,
should be...
that's not what I said.
Because just quickly, let me just get this out. If I look at Adam, right, in the Genesis account, my interest is anthropologically. Is the so-called location he's located in, does it have geographical features that I can actually pinpoint on a map today? And so far, I've spoken with anthropologists, even non-Christian anthropologists, who they'll locate Eden in the head of the Persian Gulf, the present-day Persian Gulf, that there was indeed an ancient civilization that was indeed flooded in that area. And so, fast forward to then Abraham, his locations. Fast forward to Moses. What dynasty is he located in? Is he the 19th dynasty, which is Ramses the Great? Like, you have this, as history is progressing, you see this evolution. So simultaneous with history and anthropology and human migration, the Bible, the Genesis account, moving forward is right in line with that, which communicates to me it's a completely human work, but then from a Christian lens, I would say providentially produced forward.
Yeah, so
now,
those two things. So,
but when I look at the Quran, I can't do that with the Quran. I can't say Adam is located in the Persian Gulf. I can't say the Pharaoh of Moses is Ramses.
And this is a problem here. So what you're doing is you're looking. So if you're looking, you're saying interesting. This is very, for me, it's very jumbled. Okay, and I'll try and present.
Sure, go for it.
And I think this is, to be honest with you, we're getting lots of comments about moving forward, but this is very jumbled. So on the one hand, you're saying,
but this is what interests me. This is I don't know why this is boring.
So I'll tell you what interests me. Yeah. So what interests me is the nature of God, the relationship of God, man with God, the nature of sin, mechanism of salvation. If I have a message of God that's preserved, so that I can rely on it. These are the things that really matter. Ultimately, what you seem to be doing is you're saying, look, I can try and work out a location using some of the information within the Bible that appears to fit with. This is what anthropologists, they're not claiming this is Eden. They're saying that we've got a place somewhere, that might be the place that Eden is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Great conjecture. I love it. We've got wonderful evidence. How is that relevant?
Well, it's relevant because where is Adam located? But where is Adam? Where is Adam located in the Quran?
So there's two.
Or in Islamic theology. So
there's two positions actually. Are you aware of both positions?
There's a recent book that was published in Routledge by a Muslim scholar who is trying to blend theistic evolution with the Adam of the Quran, but he at the end still concludes that Adam is first in the heavens and then he's sent to the earth.
Yeah.
But where in the earth, we don't know.
Yeah, but no.
And if he's the first man, well, that contradicts evolution. Adam's not the first man.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't. This is the problem here. This is where I said you're trying to take your secular scientific mind, and then you have a theistic mind. You're trying to merge them together. So you believe that Adam evolved from a common ancestor with primates.
Yeah. Luca,
so you're trying to, and we don't hold this belief. We believe that Adam was a creation of God, a special creation of God that was put onto the earth as is.
But I understand why you hold that belief, because that's what your belief entails. Like,
Rob, are you a Christian? Rob, are you Christian?
Yes, I'm Christian.
And do you believe that mankind, Adam, came from chimp ancestry?
Yes.
And do you think that
ultimately we're all stardust? Let's
Do
put
you
it that
think
way.
do you think that aligns with Christian beliefs, or do you think it doesn't?
Yeah, like you'll be surprised to see that, for example, Charles Darwin, the reason why he went down the anthropological route is because he was anti-racist and anti-slavery. So he had no actual other intentions to do it, but he wanted a scientific model that showcases a monogenesis of human origins
So you think that all Christians
compared to
should
a polygenesis of human
you believe that
origins.
all Christians should believe that Adam is from common descent, from chimp ancestry? Is that
There
what you
are
think?
plenty of Christians in the academic field,
No,
and
whether there
especially
are plenty of Christians or not, I'm saying, do you believe that that is what Christians should believe?
I think so, because that's what the data presents.
But do you think that would be regarded by most Christians to be a heretical belief?
No,
So
not by mainstream scholars in the field who are Christian.
Really? So you think most Christians would actually accept that Adam was a product of chimp ancestry then?
There's no creed
And
in the
your
early church
critical
that goes
analysis of
against
the
it.
Qur'an, do you apply that critical analysis to the Bible? Because you said something very interesting. I let the Bible be what it is. What is the Bible then?
The Bible is a collection of works over a vast period of, I would say, 2,000 plus years.
Right.
Various languages that appear in the Bible. Obviously, it has its final redacted form in the Hebrew tongue.
Right.
But otherwise, it corresponds very nicely with a pre-Sumerian culture in the Genesis period to an Egyptian sort of happenings in the Exodus period, moving on to an Aramaic-speaking culture in the Babylonian post-exilic period, and then finally a Greek-speaking culture in the 1st century. Like, that development, I see a one-to-one correlation with natural history.
So you haven't mentioned the Word of God or it being revelation. At the moment, it sounds very much like a history book.
Yeah.
So you see it as a history book, not revelation.
No, I see it as, so if you're talking about theopneustos, God breathed, the God-breathed nature of it, it's interesting how these terms are sort of misunderstood. They're very heavily nuanced sailing terminology, because Greek being a sailing language and a militaristic language. The idea is that the author of the Bible, or the authors of the Bible, are putting pen to paper, uniquely, writing as they should. So when Ezekiel is sitting by the rivers of Shabar and he has these theophanic engagements, it's not like he's being downloaded with information and he becomes like an automaton and he's just writing.
So is it revelation? Is it revelation from God or not? Or just a group of stories written by men?
It's people engaging with the situation at that given moment, and God, if there is a God, and this is the litmus test of the text, is working alongside the drama of that particular moment. And so so the litmus test is done by investigating, like what you said, Imran, a moment ago, when you're looking at all these nations, all their political ideals, all their agendas and so on, is there a thread of providence working through history
you
with
just
respect
said
to the text?
Rob, first of all, you said if there is a God. I mean, as a Christian, presumably you'd have firm conviction that God exists, right? Or are you sort of, is that an if question for you still?
No, I've as far as firm convictions go, yeah, I have a reasonable high conviction of God's existence.
Right. So is the Bible, Rob, is the Bible revelation from God, or is it just, as you said, people sitting down near rivers?
Yeah, so if you want me to just assert it, then yeah, I believe the Bible comes from, is divinely inspired, but I don't believe it's dictated or it's mechanistic in its origin.
Right.
And is
it a pure source?
It's organically human.
Right. Organically human. Is it a pure source for guidance and for for mankind to, in other words, to connect to God in the correct way? Would you say that it is that?
So in this sense, the guidance argument would be where God, through these Old Testament prophets, says that the vehicle by which he's speaking through is Israel, and Israel is a light to the nations. Israel is the means by which God disseminates his judgment among the nations. So and that's a litmus test. And so when I look at, say, Israel, the Jews, their theology, how their deity is engaging the other deities of the ancient Near East. There you go. Like, which deity wins, basically, in the process of time
But
leading
Rob,
up to the
I
Jesus
find
story.
it, you're a very intelligent guy. I ask you a very sort of direct question. Is it a revelation from God? And you go into a long explanation of, to be fair, I don't know what.
Was that explanation incoherent?
Well, is it from God? Is it revelation from God? That's what I'm asking you.
I can't just say yes.
Well,
I want to explain myself. Like,
well, why not? Why not? Because if I ask you, if you ask me, if you ask me, is the Quran revelation from God? I would say yes, absolutely. We believe the Quran is verbatim the word of God.
Yeah, but how did it originate?
Well, that's a different question. If you asked me that question, then I could answer that question to you, right? But if I ask you a direct question, is the Bible from God? Is it a source of guidance? And you start going into an explanation.
No, but that explanation is going alongside your question of that word guidance. Like, I can't just say it's guidance.
So when we have say inspired by God, when we have errors in the Bible, both historical and contradictions, direct contradictions, how do those occur if it's inspired by God?
Yeah, so that is that's normal in the sovereignty and the omniscience of a deity who is not all focused on, okay, make sure you dot that I and cross that T, or else it's not a divine text.
Well, no, we're not talking about dots, we're talking about accuracy. In other words, if God says certain things, you're telling me now God doesn't care if those are recorded accurately. And in fact, even if people say the opposite, you're telling me that God doesn't mind about that.
This is now where the rubber hits the road. I'm fine with, and by the way, I personally believe that the Bible, I have a high view of the Bible. So I whatever contradictions you may raise up, the more I look into what's called the biblical minimalist position, the more I'm going towards the biblical maximalist position. So I'm going away from the so-called contradictions. But this is where the rubber hits the road, because if the Bible did get things wrong, hypothetically, and, for example, anthropologically and also historically, then I would have to agree, yeah, there is a genuine error here, and I can't argue against it. Now, if the Quran has stories that are genuinely historically wrong, like, for example, Abraham with the fiery furnace, or there's a certain Haman mentioned with respect to Pharaoh.
Let's deal with that. How do we know that story? When did that story happen? First of all,
sorry, Abbas, one second, because what we're doing is, because Rob, your approach is very unusual and very strange, and I think it's sort of, at best, it's not what most Christians would accept. Let's put it that way. And I agree. And I say once again that what you're trying to do is you're trying to mesh your scientific approach and your historical approach with the Bible, and you go a long way around saying that yes, you sort of believe it, and you talk about the minimalist Bible, and there are some minimal information in there, which is true, and that's taking me towards the maximalist. I mean, I don't even know what these terms are, to be honest with you, but I'm assuming that what these means. You can correct me. And at the same time,
these are terms within the guild, like within biblical scholars.
Okay. I don't know what the guild is, and to be honest with you, if it's your approach, it still doesn't make sense to me what you're saying. Nothing, with all due respect, that you've said comes across to me as coherent. You're saying that you believe that the Bible is inspired. You also believe it has errors in it. You need to clarify what you mean when you say there's guidance in it, but it was for the people at the time who are writing in their particular historical context.
Just to clarify, I wouldn't say there's historical errors in the text, and not even intentionally. If there is an error, like say a wrong cosmology, which is an ancient Near Eastern cosmology, it's not intentionally wrong, because it's part of the cultural milieu of flat Earth with a solid dome and all that stuff. But I would then point to a modern cosmology as well.
This example you've raised, this wasn't my what I was going to raise, but you're saying it's the fact that the writers of the Bible who were inspired would write about the natural world in an inaccurate way is not a problem.
No.
The creator knew though that this was inaccurate,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't correct them.
Nope.
Okay. What else from that position? Because now when I look at this text, I know that there isn't it.
Again, it's nuanced. If I can explain it, I'll explain it.
You can in a moment. At what stage do I think that this is something that I should rely on?
Okay. So when I look at Genesis 1, this is just to give you that example, since you want me to venture into that. Why is it 6 days? Because again, in the ancient Near East, they had a 6-day inauguration of their deity, and then on the 7th day, in that temple, they would then put the deity on a pedestal as it's resting. Same pattern with respect to the Genesis account. The whole universe is considered God's cosmic temple, and on the 7th day, he rests. What makes it very unique out of all the ancient
How do you know that?
Because the text follows because the Jews wanted to communicate that their God could not be localized in a human temple. That God is transcendent to the temple, and he basically fills the heavens and the earth, all of creation. So it's a polemical story against ancient Near Eastern creation myths, where they'll even borrow terms like the Hebrew word tahom in Genesis 1-2, the deep, the dark waters that the spirit hovers. Tahom is a cognate with Tiamat, the Tiamat Marduk warring of the gods. So there's a polemical pushback against the superstitions of the time, like Tiamat.
By taking on the superstitions in your text.
No, it's taking cognate terms, right? It's taking a cognate term, Tiamat, transposing that into what we know as Tahom in Ugaritic and / Hebrew.
No, but Rob, you're missing the point I was making.
No, wait. I haven't finished. Wait. So what's happening is that the author is naturalizing the mythology. So what the ancient Near Eastern folk thought of as superstitiously that there's a Tiamat monster and she's warring with Marduk, and when Marduk defeats Tiamat, that's how the earth was formed. The Genesis author is saying, no, it's just the waters. It's just the dark waters out there. There's nothing superstitious. There's no gods warring. I'll give you another example: the great light and the lesser light. So you have Shemesh.
Rob, none of these illustrations are helping, because what
this
you're doing
is very
is
unique, psychologically very unique in that cultural milieu.
What you're doing is you're reading huge amounts of information into the text that isn't there. And you're allegorizing everything. So do you think the Genesis is an allegory? The creation is an allegory. It's not reality. It's not actually what happened. It's an allegory for the people of the time to understand what they believe is false.
Yeah. So I have a foot in ancient Near Eastern scholarship that showcases this what they will call a framework hypothesis of the passage that would fit this thing you call allegory. I actually go a little bit further with knowledge, and I'm in good company with this with other scientists, where we entertain the thought that, hang on, chronologically, days 1 to 6 can match Earth's 4.5 billion year history, like natural history. And so I know ancient Near Eastern scholars push back against that because they're like, look, that's a bit of an audacious statement. Like, how can this ancient text make such a prediction? And I'm saying, yeah,
Rob,
I mean, I can actually blend the two. The point is, if I just stick with the ancient Near Eastern scholarship, they themselves would acknowledge that this text is very unique in that culture, because it's like as if Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens went back in time and said, the Shemesh deity is just a great light. The moon deity is just a lesser light. Like, the Genesis author is actually atheistic against the ancient Near Eastern deities. That's what I find very interesting. The Genesis author is very naturalistic.
Rob, I'm going to be very polite and just say that you say a lot of stuff from a conjectural perspective, because all these things that you're bringing, like I said, you put a lot of information into this sort of text that isn't there, and you make all of these sort of assumptions. But really, what you're trying, it just comes across as a mishmash of incoherent ideas at the moment to me, and it's still this thing that you're trying to you're trying, sorry, someone just put a funny comment that made me laugh. You're trying to bring science and your theology, and you're trying to mash them together.
Well,
And I'm going to say,
then,
with respect, with 1 second, with respect, what I'd
answer
say
then
that,
the Abraham and the fire Chaldean situation. Like,
Rob,
where is
let
that
me just-
historically?
Rob, let me just explain to you this comment. Rob, let me just explain to you this comment. This jalebis. Do you know what jalebis are?
No need to explain
No.
that.
We have an Indian sweet, yeah, and it's I can't remember what it's actually made.
The only
of,
Indian sweet I'm aware of is the gulab jamun, I think.
Yeah,
it's
the gulab
pronounced.
jamun
Yeah,
is
yeah,
round.
yeah.
Yeah, the jalebi
Yeah, yeah.
is something that comes in like a cloth bag. They have a little hole in it, and then they fry it in sugar, but they sort of spin it round as a little sort of spaghetti thing, as a little sort of spaghetti thing. So I think that's what Imran was laughing at. But let's keep it a little bit.
I didn't want to say that, but it's so. But
I'm
anyway,
from Hyderabad,
Rob,
by the way. I was born.
So you should know
you
jalebis,
know what a
man.
jalebi is, yeah. Come. So
But I
what
left
would
at the
say
age of
is-
9, so
Sure.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, so what I would say is that, look, all of these wonderful ideas are not convincing me at all of anything to do with the position that you hold. It definitely wouldn't make me into a Christian. And actually, what you're doing to me is you're taking away from anything that would make me think the Bible is something I can rely on for salvation. And still, the main problem.
Yeah, but just quickly, notice you've asked me to bring up Quran issues, but now it's gone to biblical issues that I'm having to respond to, and
Yeah,
I'm
because
fine
you
with
raised-
that.
Because the way you raised the Quran
But-
issues, you said that you said you had a thought experiment, and your thought
Yeah.
experiment was, I imagine that this Quran, and if there was no God, and it would be how it would be written.
Mhm.
And then I brought a Bible out and I compared it to the Bible. So your standard you're using to critique the Quran is the Bible, and then you're wondering why the conversation went to the Bible. And what you've said about the Bible is that the Bible is.
But not only that, Imran.
No, I'm not using the Bible to critique the Quran.
Not only
You're
that.
saying it doesn't match.
No, but also Rob.
Yeah, but
Not only that,
Yeah.
but you're taking stories that are thousands of years old that may actually have some truth in them, that may have some embellishments in them. The point is, we don't know what is embellished and what is truth. We don't know because those texts don't exist from back then. So all we have is hearsay. Potentially, they could be completely false, or they could be true, or they could have some truth in them, right? Now, if the Quran refers to something that's thousands of years ago, and throughout history, we know that history has not been faithfully recorded, and that opinions of people and writers and things have changed over that 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 year history, you're using that standard as the yardstick to measure the Quran by. And I would say to you that your yardstick is faulty, because there is no way of for sure falsifying or claiming any of those apocryphal works that are thousands of years old. There's no way. At best, historians will have an educated guess, or they will say this is perhaps probabilistically more likely or less likely. There's no surety. It's just
the first, but again, with the Abraham situation, the first mention of him being in a fiery furnace is because of Jerome's mistranslation of ore in the Latin Vulgate.
Okay, but could
hold on a second. Talmudic literature,
right? But could he have actually got that right? But there were other embellishments that he added to that story. Is that a possibility?
So I found a paper. I think it's a Harvard publication. I'll have to recheck, but it's a 2015 publication where this scholar had the same, frustration, I suppose, with wanting to know the development of this. And he did some very interesting digging with respect to the Zoroastrian religion that had its ideas preserved in a Greco-Roman setting in the 2nd century of the Common Era. And then, due to Jerome's mistranslation, and hence Christians cropping up this legend through the Latin reading of ore being fire, then you have this legend of, then you have this 1st century BC text known as the Book of Jubilees that mentions how Abraham destroyed the idols.
Could that
so they're marrying the two.
Rob, could that story of Abraham being in the fire, could that be true?
No.
It could not be true, Rob.
No, it could not be.
So now you're talking from a matter of certainty that it can't be true. I'd like to know where you get that certainty from. Do you have the original records at the time of Abraham?
Yes, we do. So from the 1800s, we have now the Ugaritic corpus This is why biblical scholars, the Wellhausen school, went down that route initially with the whole documentary hypothesis.
We have the original writings at the time of Abraham. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we have the cuneiform.
Which ones are those?
They're called cuneiform. Like,
yeah.
Go and look up Sumerian cuneiform.
Parchment paper. Where do we find this?
No, cuneiform is written in clay, like it's carved, like you're talking about strokes and indents and all that, like triangles.
And what does it say about Abraham? That he wasn't in the fire. Does it say that? What does he say exactly?
Well, you have cognate, the cognate equivalent of his name, but with respect to the culture that he's in, the Genesis story never mentions him thrown into a fiery furnace.
I'm talking about original documents from the time of Abraham.
Yes.
The
So
story of the fire.
So the Genesis story never mentions Abraham in a fiery furnace. If the Ugaritic corpus mentioned that that's the practice that they did in the 2nd millennium BC period, then Genesis would be wrong and the Quran would be correct. But there's no mention of a fiery judgment furnace thing for people who destroy idols in that period. The first time that occurs is in the 6th century BC period, which happens to be Daniel's...
Now you're making a general assumption based upon some text that went into how people were punished.
But ancient Near Eastern scholars are well aware of the chronological depictions of what's taking place.
You've now generalized that this is how people were punished, because it doesn't seem to mention that people were punished by destroying idols by being thrown into the fire.
We see that technology.
Rob, I think Rob, you're being a bit.
We know that technology.
To be fair, I'll tell you what you're doing. You're being a bit disingenuous here because you're applying certainty when in fact there is no certainty.
There is certainty.
No, there isn't. There's an assumption.
Show me an anthropologist. If you told an anthropologist that the Chaldeans practiced fire burning in a furnace that you see take place in the 6th century BC in Daniel's book, that anthropologist or that ancient Near Eastern scholar will tell you you're being anachronistic. That practice didn't occur until 600 years before Jesus, but Abraham's 2,000 years plus before Jesus. That practice never existed.
So you're saying that people 2,000 years before Jesus never threw anybody into the fire?
They didn't create a fiery furnace, or the concept of a fiery furnace didn't exist until the Daniel story.
Where does it say fiery furnace?
Sorry, 1 second. So, Rob, what you're saying is that you've not come across any evidence, and you're just you accept what your anthropologist colleagues are saying on this. Is that your position? Yeah.
Well, it's not just that I accept it. It's not like an argument from authority. It's just it's an amalgamation and accumulated argument showcasing the psychology of the culture, what technology that culture had, the law codes, because Nizam brought up, for example, the law codes of that period.
What technology does fire require?
Their engagement with, you've destroyed this idol, ergo you're thrown into fire. That is not practiced in that culture.
What is the actual technology that you think is required to burn someone in a fire?
Yeah, so I forgot his name. I'll bring up his name actually. There's one particular guy who specializes in ancient Near Eastern furnaces with smelting, gold, iron, like precious metals.
Where does it say in the Quran that it was a furnace that melts gold and iron? Where does it say that in the Quran?
No, I'm talking about the technology, like the furnace.
But why are you talking about the furnace? The Quran doesn't talk about a furnace that melts gold and iron.
But that's what the myth says about Abraham.
But that's not what the Quran is saying. The Quran is not saying that.
Yeah, the Quran just says fire be cool. Like Allah tells the fire to be cool.
It was just a fire. It was a basic fire.
But that statement is word for word in the Talmud. It's in the legends of the Jews.
So what?
That pre-exist the Quran.
So what?
And what does that show, Rob?
I have to wonder which came first, that statement in Legend of the Jews or the Quran?
Rob, what are the logical possibilities? You're a clever guy.
The logical possibility is the Book of Jubilees mentions Abraham destroying idols. Nowhere else is that occurred.
No. That's not the logical possibility.
Jerome mistranslates to be fire.
Rob, you know exactly the question I asked you. You know exactly the question I asked you. What are the logical possibilities that it seems word for word in relation to what the Old Testament is saying? What are the logical possibilities? One is that it could be
with
copied.
respect to the Old Testament.
One is that it could be copied. Yes?
It has to be. Like, one of these two possibilities. It has to be either it was a human author of the Quran copying it,
so you're
or
right.
if it's from Allah, then
Yes.
Allah is word for word picking a Talmudic author and saying, this is the truth of the matter.
How do you know? How do you know that those words were not inspired by God in the Talmud?
Now that's a theological faith claim that you can't verify historically.
Well, you can't verify the other one either, can you? But it's a logical possibility, Rob.
So now,
no.
Notice this: out of convience, you're forcing the Talmudic writer to be telling the truth. Because you're looking at this through the Quranic lens.
No, Rob.
Guys, this is really going around in a bit of a circle. So
I'm just going to just finish it, Imran. I'm just going to quickly finish. Rob, there are only two logical possibilities. One is that it's copied an incorrect story. The other one is that they both come from the same source, and that's why you find similarity. That's the two logical possibilities, Rob. The point is, Rob, you're coming at the approach with the foundational concept that the Quran is not from God. So you
I'm not. No. I don't have the bias. I'm making sure I don't have the bias.
I'll tell you why you are, Rob, because you said, if I think about that the Quran isn't from God, then the only possibility is that it's copied these apocryphal stories and it's done this and it's done that.
If I started off presuming the Quran's from God, I would be gobsmacked to find what is obviously a false story of Abraham repeated in the Quran. Like, why didn't Allah correct the myth?
So this is the thing. So your assumption is, this is the assumption you're making. Do you understand? This is the underlying bias that you have. You're saying that if it's not in the Bible, then I'm not going to accept it.
No, I'm not even saying that either.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's absent in the Bible. The Bible is one of the larger data set of points.
Rob,
we're talking about a big data set of what happened in ancient history.
Rob, with all due respect, we've taken this probably a lot longer than we should have done so. However, I know that Sister Salma's been waiting a long time. She wanted to say something. I don't normally allow people to come and interact with other guests, but she's been asking.
Yeah, I'm happy to bring on
she's been
people.
asking so many times,
yeah.
But it will just be a very short interaction if that's all right, Sister Salma.
Yeah, go for it.
You can leave your camera on or switch it off if you want to. I'm going to get you on now. Hi, Sister Salma. Welcome to the stream.
Hello, Salma.
You're just muted, sister.
Sorry. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa Islam.
Yeah, hi.
Alaikum salam. I hope that was.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Look, I guess why I wanted to come is because I'm very disappointed that Rob keeps doing this. He's basing everything on conjecture, all guesswork, doesn't want to take anything. I'm not sure why you guys even bothering to talk to him, since he just...
All right, Sister Salma, with all due respect, I thought you were going to ask something directly to Rob. I don't want this to become...
No,
I don't know, but I don't want... I don't want this to become... I don't want this to become... open house in terms of making comments like that. I'd rather you perhaps make comments on emails and what have you. Rob, all I'm going to say to you, quite frankly, is that you're looking at historical records that are not certain. You're applying certainty to them. And when the Quran says either something different or says something that's similar, that's perhaps regarded to be potentially apocrypha or false or made up, therefore the Quran is false. This is illogical, quite frankly. And for us, and Rob, to be perfectly honest,
so why
Rob,
honestly,
Rob, to be perfectly honest, if you were to apply that critical thinking to the Bible, okay, the Bible would fall apart.
Nizam, by the way, did a brilliant job doing that.
The Bible would fall apart on virtually all.
And by the way, Nizam, I'm saying that honestly. Like, I like Nizam, so yeah.
That's great. But Rob, I think what we'll do is we'll allow you to come on again next time. But perhaps what we'll do is we'll try to stick to a particular subject. We'll see if Brother Ijaz can join as well, and we'll deal with that subject. But I just feel that there's a double standard going on here. You have.
But why can't it be?
I tell you why, Rob.
Why does it have to go down to judging and psychologizing my ill intent, so to speak?
It's not psychologizing, Rob. You're a grown up, Rob. You can take that. Surely you're a strong enough.
Obviously, that's why I'm not being.
No, Rob. There's a double standard, because what you're doing is you're not applying the same standard to the Bible.
But I am.
Well, you're not, Rob. To be honest, you're not.
In what way?
Because
where have I not?
If there are historical errors in the Bible, you don't think that's corruption. You don't think that's change. You don't think that makes the Bible, in effect, untrustable.
So the same standard that I'm applying to the Quran, I have to do. To be fair, I have to do with any other text, just like what anthropologists do with any text of the ancient Near East or the Greco-Roman world or whatever.
Do you think that Muslims are going to use the historical method, which is at best an opinion, trying to repiece things together that were lost for thousands of years? And do you think, and most of them, by the way, their underlying assumption is not going to be that this is revelation that they're talking about, whether it's the Quran or the Bible. And therefore, the underlying assumption from the very get-go will be that any similarity has to be a copy of some sort.
And then here's my final point.
Let me just finish, Rob. So let me just finish. So they're coming in with a whole pile of assumptions. And when they find something, then they say, you see, look, we've proven this. This is how it must have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I would suggest, Rob, that that's basically setting yourself up to fail. You're never going to be able to find the truth that way, quite frankly.
But so my final comments are, to bridge this with the Abraham situation as an example, for me, what would convince me that the Quran could possibly be from a supernatural source is if the myth was corrected. Because linguists, anthropologists, ancient Near Eastern scholars, so from a vast range of those who specialize in, say, Jerome's Latin Vulgate with respect to his mistranslation of Or, to the Talmudic literature and where they're concocting up the story, to the intertestamental period literature like the Book of Jubilees, which was a 1st century BC document, that big, say, 5 centuries worth of data point where the story originates from, actually, that scholarship then showcases that this myth or this legend is just that, a myth and a legend.
And this is the underlying, Rob, this is the problem.
If you can verify in the 2nd millennium BC that this is a true thing, again, Rob, then I'll retract the statement.
Yeah, sure. This is the same thing again, Rob. But my standard is secular historians needed to verify text. I don't have anything earlier than this available to me historically. So I'm going to assume that this story was only been mentioned from 300 CE or wherever that is. And therefore, if the Quran mentions something about something that happened at that time that I can't verify using my history and anthropology, I'm going to reject it. Okay.
Well, then if I'm looking at this through the lens of the Quran, then I'm forced to believe that Jerome got it right with his translation, and he's the only unique one of all the Bible translations out there that has fire of the Chaldeans. No other Bible translation has that rendering except Jerome's Latin Vulgate.
This is the whole thing. Why should I accept? So, for example, if it hasn't been corrected, let's hold your theory. If it hasn't been corrected, why are you assuming it's wrong?
Because when we look at Jerome's argument for why he translated,
you're not hearing my question. If the Quran doesn't correct what you think is a mistake, why is it wrong? Why is it wrong?
So if it doesn't correct this mistake, then I can't. It's coming back to Abbas's point. How else am I going to explain then that this legend repeats itself in its own, Arabic form in the Quran without any correction? I have to make a conclusion that the origin of the story happens to be through the fallible human interpretation in the first 5 centuries, and here you go, it's in the Quran.
The whole Bible is human interpretation throughout this whole history. That was your framing of it.
But then the irony is that even this...
The Bible is a human endeavor. Rob, 1 second. 1 second, Rob. The Bible, because this is the highlight and double stand again. The Bible is a human endeavor written according to the understanding of the people of the time, with mistakes about how the natural world works, with mistakes about history, with mistakes about and you hold that as a standard.
So this is what makes it ironic. That human work pre-Jerome.
Yeah, but then at the same
has
time,
nothing mentioning about a fiery furnace that Abraham was thrown in.
Exactly. Well, that doesn't
Stephen in Acts 7 doesn't mention. He says country of Chaldea. It doesn't say fire of Chaldea.
It doesn't help the point.
It
doesn't help the point. So this is the whole issue. It doesn't help the point, because what you're saying is humans have written this. There's mistakes all over it, but it's still inspired, and you can rely on it as a source of.
Don't say wholesale mistakes, otherwise everything would be an error, and there's nothing.
It's lots of mistakes, human error within it. You agree or not agree?
I wouldn't. That's a bit of a. To say everything is an error. It doesn't work like that.
Say everything. Because you said Bible minimalist.
Like when you're saying all over it.
All over it doesn't mean all of it.
Like a lot of ancient texts are remarkably accurate, even if it's just a human penned thing. Like the cuneiform listings are very accurate in and of itself.
So this is where it gets to the point where there's a little bit of just flowery words without actually any point. So I think that I honestly I don't feel there's any value in speaking with you, because you don't actually get anywhere. We don't get anywhere with this. You set the Bible up as something called historical anthropological enterprise by people that we should somehow then rely on as a revelation to help us to guide ourselves.
Why does these discussions have to go down to psychologizing my motive?
There's no psychologizing.
I'm being disingenuous.
No, did I say
I'm
disingenuous?
just raising these data points.
Rob, one thing's really important. You use the word psychologizing a lot as a pejorative to say to the other person that they're trying to think what you're thinking. And
but
actually,
this is what was happening in the prior discussion.
In saying that, it wasn't. In saying that you're psychologizing is doing exactly what you're saying. You are psychologizing me by saying that I'm psychologizing you, and I'm not doing that. I'm telling you where your argument doesn't follow. Do you understand? So what I'm going to do is I think this conversation is gone the length that it's going to go. You're welcome on again, and then we can have this conversation maybe another time. I wish you all the best, Rob. Okay.
No worries. You guys take care.
Take care.
Yeah, it's taken rather a long time, but the Quran simply says they built a fire and they threw him in the fire. All this.
Maybe
please.
Please, Nazam, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So there are some differences between the two stories with the Quran and the Jewish source that our friend Rob was mentioning. One of the differences is that the Jewish source says the reason why Abraham, or why they wanted to throw Abraham into the fire, was because he refused to worship the fire, whereas in the Quranic narrative, it's to do with Abraham basically mocking their beliefs. So he basically destroys the idols, and then he mockingly say the big idol is the one that did it. So they wanted to throw him in the fire because not because he refused to worship the fire, but because he destroyed the idols and made fun out of the beliefs to show the nonsensical of the worship. And Rob is right. With regards to that particular source, there is a particular phrase which there is some similarities, but it's not word for word identical.
But Nazam, but he said it was word for word identical.
No, I can actually quote it to you if you want. Okay. So the Quran in chapter 21, verse number 69 is what Rob is referring to. And the translation is, we said, O fire, be coolness and safety upon Abraham. Whereas the source that Rob refers to says, may cooling and comfort be granted to my servant Abraham. So it's similar, but it's not identical. So it says, may cooling and comfort be granted to my servant Abraham. Whereas the Quran says, we said, O fire, be coolness and safety upon Abraham.
And the important thing here, Nazam, right? Important thing, Nazam, here is this, yeah? Throughout history, we learn people being thrown into fires as a form of punishment.
That was the other thing,
It's not something new. It's
Yeah.
not just started 500
Not like
years
the
ago or
first time
1,000
that-
years ago.
yeah.
I mean,
It's not like the first time someone documented someone was thrown in, that was the first time that someone was thrown into a fire. Yeah.
Yeah, but just because something has not been documented necessarily, specifically in that way, or you don't find that that's how they punished people when they destroyed idols, doesn't mean it didn't happen, therefore. I mean, it just seems to me untenable to really go down that route.
I mean, it's like crucifixion, I guess, was like in the time of Jesus, wasn't a Jewish punishment, but the unusual method of punishment was stoning rather than crucifying.
Sure. Okay, so we've got too many guests that we're not going to probably have to get everybody on, but I think Robin's been waiting on a long time, so I'm going to get Robin on very, very quickly. Robin, if you could ask your question, and Nazam, why don't you respond to that, and then possibly Dr. Imran very briefly.
Oh, okay, sure, I'll be quick.
Robin, welcome to the stream.
Yeah, hi, Bus. Thanks for having me. Hopefully you can hear me all right.
Sorry for the long wait, Robin.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Look, yeah, this is the I think it's about 2 months since I last came on your stream, and in the last stream we had a discussion about the creation of the universe and the 6-day creation from the Islamic perspective, and looking at the word days, which is the word yom. But I did a bit more research on that, and the word days in the Arabic, which when it uses the word 6 days, is called ayam min. So it's actually a little bit, which is I guess the plural of yom. So and all the times where it uses the word 6 days, it has that same word ayam min. Now we also find that same word ayam min used in Surah 2, for instance, where it's speaking about the Hajj, and when you fast for 3 days. And then you also the Hajj, and there's a 7 days afterwards, and a total of 10 days. So that word is ayamin. So they are actually 24-hour literal days that you're fasting, and yet you're sort of trying to say that the 6-day creation that the Qur'an mentions in a number of surahs, those words ayamin are not literal 24-hour days. So that's not actually what the sort of text says.
Right. Okay. So Robin, your argument is that the Quran is saying that the universe basically was created in 6 24-hour days, not periods. That's what you're claiming, right?
That's what that's what I'm saying, that the word ayamin.
Do you know Arabic words, when they use in different contexts and in different structures, can actually mean different things? Are you aware of that?
Oh, look, I accept that some words can sort of mean different things, but what I'm saying is that 6-day creation is quite different. And I did a little bit more digging, and I found, I don't know whether you guys accept the Sahih Muslim is true, but there is a statement in Sahih Muslim. It's in Sahih Muslim. The reference is 39607, and it says Allah created clay on Saturday, the mountain Sunday, trees Monday, things entailing Tuesday, light Wednesday, animals Thursday, and Adam Friday. So, again, that is kind of like a 6-day creation account that we find in the.
Give me the reference for that, please.
Yeah, it's Sahih Muslim, book 39, and the reference is, or the verse is 6707. And I'll read out the passage. It's saying, Abu Hurairah reported that Allah's messenger, may peace be upon him, took hold of my hands and said, Allah, the exalted and glorious, created the clay on Saturday, and he created the mountains on Sunday, and he created the seas on Monday, and he created the things entailing labor on Tuesday, and created light on Wednesday, and lie caused the animals to spread on Thursday, and created Adam, peace be upon him, after Asir on Friday. last creation at the last hour of the hours of Friday, that is between afternoon and night. So do you...
Just give me the book. What book was it? Sahih Muslim, what book number?
Book number is 39.
39. And the hadith number?
6707. So that's speaking about a week. So we have, if you like, there's sort of 6 days that, or 7 days that actually Allah made these different things for different days, which are all to do with Earth, things to do with Earth.
Robin, so when it comes to the Quran doesn't mention like God made in the evening such and such, and then in the morning he made such and such. The book of Genesis does that, and therefore it applies a 24-hour period, because like the Earth's rotation in relationship to the sun, how you get morning and evening. But even though the Quran, like, whilst it confirms like the biblical account of 6 days creation, it doesn't say that in the morning and in the evening God made such and such, and therefore it leaves it open to like reasonable interpretation. In that they can mean like a long period of time. It could be 24 hours, but not necessarily 24 hours. But the main point of the Quran is not to argue for whether there's a 24-hour creation or whether there's a long period, because it seems to me like that the Quran, if people want to hold on to that view, that there's a 24-hour period, then the Quran is picking its battles. So the Quran is not going to like argue over people whether it's 24 hours or a longer period, but the Quran is more concerned about like who is God, the nature of God, as well as belief in the life after death and belief in his messengers, who was Jesus, belief in Jesus as he was. So these are things that Quran is interested. So the Quran is picking its battles, but the Quran doesn't.
It mentions it a number of the times, though. In fact, like the 6-day creation is not just mentioned once; it's mentioned in Surah chapter 7, verse 54.
Robin, I did explain to you grammatically that word can mean 24-hour periods, and it can mean what's the term?
Period, a long period.
And extended period. Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. So now hold on a second, Robin. So that's what it can mean. Now, the thing is, you're insisting that the Quran is talking about 24-hour periods, and whereas in the Bible it is specifically talking about 24-hour periods, whereas the Quran isn't. That's the point that I'm trying to make to you.
Yeah, but sort of what I'm saying is that same word in Arabic, ayamin, which is used for days as in plural of 24 hours, when it uses the word 6 or 3 or 7, for instance, as I brought up to you before, that in the Surah chapter 2, when it speaks about the Hajj, it uses that same word ayamin, being plural for days, as in 3 days, and as in 7 days. That's the days you observe in the Hajj.
The context of that is clear, that it's speaking about a 24-hour period in that place. But in terms of creation of heavens and earth, there it's not explicit. Whereas about fasting and Hajj, that's clear, because that's clearly implied that it's referring to a 24-hour period. But when it comes to the creation of the 6 days of creation, it's not explicitly. It doesn't explicitly say 24-hour period. But the book of Genesis does say, like, in the morning and in the evening, God created.
Sure.
That applies 24 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, Robin. Robin, but I'm sorry, I'm not cutting you off. I've got about 7 other people waiting, and I'm not going to be able to get them on. I only wanted to get you on, but maybe when we've got more time, we'll go through specifically. I think Anis put the hadith up as well, but we'll specifically go into that. But I think, Robin, I think the thing here is that where the Bible specifically talks about 24-hour periods, do you think that's wrong, or do you think that's right?
No, look, so as I say, as I've said to you before, I'm not going to argue for the literal interpretation of the first 11 books of Genesis. Like William Lane Craig, I would see those 11 chapters as being mytho-historical. So I think it's just basically a story. It's an explanation. So I don't accept that God created the universe in 6 days, 6 little days, as we would understand them to be. Yeah, so that's written from that's written from a very geocentric perspective.
So are those God's words or are those man's words then?
Oh, I think that basically it is a human tradition that comes down. So I don't see that as being, if you like, divinely inspired. And I've kind of sort of said to you before on this stream, that I sort of see that there is that the Bible, particularly the Old Testament, half it's baby, half it's bathwater. So but from the book of Genesis, or if you like, from that story, it's a very ancient creation story, but is not necessarily meant to be taken literally. As even Sir Rob was saying, the previous guy you had on was saying, I would agree with him.
So could it be, Robin, could it be that God actually did create the universe in 6 periods, and throughout history other prophets were told this as well, and so those stories have been lost over time or embellished over time, and therefore there does seem to be some 6-day connection going right back throughout history? Could that be a possibility, Robin?
Oh, I would see it as a greater possibility that basically the Islamic tradition has inherited the Christian and sort of Jewish traditions before them from the previous.
That's not what I asked you, Robin.
The previous books are written.
Yeah, but
no,
Robin,
I don't.
That's not what I asked you.
Okay, so there is no evidence of a six creation period. Like the Earth wasn't around for the first 9 billion years, and it's only become habitable.
All right, Robin, thanks a lot for coming on. It's great to have you on. I'm sure we'll get you on again. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We just don't have the time to be doing this, to be honest. Amy, I'm going to get you on next. Can you just put your camera on very quickly? We're going to just literally be on for 2 or 3 minutes. I'm sorry, Amy, we can't get you on for very long. Okay, we're going to get you on now. You can turn your camera off or leave it on, whatever you're comfortable with. Are you ready to come on? There we go. Okay. Amy, if you could please put a question, and I'll get Dr. Imran to answer this one, and then we'll get the next guest on. Please go ahead.
Sure. My classic question is just, why do you believe in God?
Lovely. All right, Dr. Imran, if you could answer that, and then we'll get the next guest on.
So, Amy, why are you interested in the question?
I am interested in the question because I'm a counter-apologist, and I think that theism is one of the great superstitions in today's world.
And what's led you to that conclusion?
Generally speaking, how theists interact within the world, believing that not only are they not going to have this life but another, and so it makes them base judgments, it makes them have possibly negative interactions or not even resolve interactions in this life because they think they're going to go on to another.
So you think that because people who are theists believe in another life, they behave badly?
So for good people to do good, oh, that's normal. Bad people to be bad, but good people to be bad, that takes religion.
Have you heard of Stalin?
Sure.
Pol Pot?
Yes. Not great farmers.
Yeah. Not great theists either.
No.
They were atheists.
Turns out that bad people are atheists and theists.
Yeah. So it doesn't hold.
Are you saying that because there are bad atheists, therefore theism should be a positive force in the world?
No, I'm saying that your reason for the interest in the question doesn't make sense. Because if you think that the problem that you have with theists or theism is that because theists behave badly in the world, and then you should have an equal problem with atheists because they behave just as badly, if not worse, I would say,
but
in the world.
The difference between someone.
So then the question really is what is the what's your interest in the question? If you're saying that because there are bad theists, then you just, as you said, there are bad atheists.
But my point is not that they're bad theists. I'm saying that they're good people doing bad things because of theism.
So that's where you have to establish is because of theism.
Well,
sure.
So
most people, why don't you give me some of that information so I can understand where you're coming from?
Can I give you the nose on the head for my example would be something like 9/11, which I think was a problem of fundamentalism and not of bad Muslims, not of bad people.
No, so you're misunderstanding my question. We know bad things have happened. Maybe we know bad things have happened.
Okay.
The question for you is, you have to establish that the religion is what's causing the theist belief in the existence of God. Sure. Is the cause of this behavior.
Why do you think that an event like that happened? Why do you think? What's the main reason?
That's my question to you.
Oh, theism.
You're asking it back to me.
I would say it's a religion. I would say specifically Islam and that religion, but it could have been any others. We have people here that bomb abortion clinics, Christians, and so theism.
No, but that's just saying what you said in the first place. To establish that theism causes this, you have to give something information-wise. Either if you're going to blame a specific theistic religion, you've chosen Islam with the sort of pejorative claim
for tonight
of 9/11. Yeah, sure. Because you're talking to Muslims, it makes sense. Yeah. So that 9/11 was somehow inspired by Islam. Can you evidence?
I would say that taken by what Osama bin Laden said he was doing it for, what the messenger said that they were trying to send a message to a sinful West. And so that it was kind of clear why this was done for religious fundamentalist reasons, because they said it and we just kind of have to take them at what they're saying.
Dr. Imran, if I could just Amy, do you know what Osama bin Laden actually said on the matter?
What?
You're indulging.
No, he was asked, but your religion forbids killing innocent people. Do you know what he said?
What?
I'm not killing them for religion. He said, you're killing my people here, and so I'm going to kill your people there. That's what he said.
Who are his people?
Middle East. He said, in the Middle East, you've put bases in, you've got military in the Middle East. Many Muslim countries are being attacked. So these are my people, basically. He said, you're killing us and you're killing our children. We're going to do the same to you. That's exactly that's his words, Amy.
It wasn't to commit jihad.
That's not what he said.
Do you think that...
No, Amy, you need to get your facts straight, you see. When you say Osama bin Laden said he's doing...
Would you be able to give me a reference for why I said that?
Google it. You'll find it in 5 minutes.
Google it.
Less than that. Maybe 2 minutes you'll find it. Have you looked at the works of Professor Robert Pape or from the University of Chicago or Scott Atram?
I have not.
Okay, I Google these people as well, and their studies on terrorism and suicide bombing, and they've interviewed hundreds of people to accumulate the statistics, and they've advised governments on anti-terror and anti-extremism. And you hear what they say. It's nothing to do with religion. You look at what the MI5 Secret Service here says. It's nothing to do with religion. At best, this is the MI5 saying, at best, they have a rudimentary understanding of Islam. It's geopolitical.
Sure. Can I quote Osama bin Laden? I have sworn to only live free, even if I find bitter the taste of death. I don't want to die humiliated or deceived. I support any Muslims, whether here or abroad. I'm fighting so I can die a martyr and go to heaven to meet God.
Yeah, but he said specifically when he was questioned on the subject, why are you doing this when you're targeting innocent people? He said, I'm simply doing what they're doing to me. That's what he said.
Yeah, because we're attacking Muslims. It's a religious war.
What I'd advise you to do, Amy, study the works of Professor Robert Pape.
Robert Pape?
Professor Robert Pape. And the works of Scott Atram.
Okay.
Scott Atram. Study their works because they're academic works. They've actually gone into and delved into what is it that motivates people to do these acts. And what they found is it's geopolitical. religion is often used as a means to simply nullify or reduce a person's, let's say, guilt on the matter, but it's not the catalyst. It's not what makes them go and do what they're doing.
Can we separate Islam, the religion, from the politics? We can separate those two things.
Amy, I don't understand where this is leading to now.
Because for Muslims, when you're saying it's geopolitical, you're saying, yes, it's for about us, Muslims.
No, what I'd advise you to do, Amy, is study the works of the people that I've given you, and that might enlighten you as to what actually motivates these people. You see, you're so desperate to try to create this link between Islam and terrorism. When Imran has asked you, what is your evidence for that? You've provided nothing, basically.
Except for 9/11, which so far we have seen Osama bin Laden said it was for religious reasons.
That's not evidence to give correlation between Islam and.
So let me just help. Let me help Amy with this. Just give me 1 second. So, Amy, the way to do it is, you'd get the religious sources, because quoting a guy, whoever that guy with all respect is not the same as quoting religion.
Okay.
The religious sources. So you'd have to go to the Qur'an, you'd have to go to some hadith, something that would tell you that it's okay to carry out whatever you think is a bad thing. And then at that point, so like you're talking about 9/11, something that justifies 9/11 from the religious texts, that's not ambiguous. Yeah. So if you bring in something ambiguous, then obviously that's ambiguous. It's not definitive. And then we can have a conversation. Now the problem is that if I were to it still doesn't help your point, because your reason for being interested in the question of the existence of God was to do with the fact that people do bad things, and bad people have. You've said that religious people have religious motives for doing bad things.
So very specifically, good people do good things, bad people do bad things. But if you want good people to do bad things, you need religion.
I mean, these are sort of sound bites that don't have any merit. And these are sort of widely available in the West. It takes good men.
I think it's extremely hard to separate that event from religion. And I also want to point out that I'm not trying to tie Islam to terrorism, because it could have been a different religion with a different thing.
I get it. I understand that you're not being malicious. I'm not. I know that you're not like that. We've had conversations before. But what I'm saying to you is that this approach that you're taking. This is why I didn't answer your question directly. I was trying to understand what's the motivations, and the motivations that you brought forward don't really, for me, they don't really hold water, in the sense that you said that it was about you were concerned about bad things happening, and then you said that the bad things were religiously motivated. I asked you about evidencing that, and I was really trying to get you to look at the sources, but you evidence sort of events, or you evidence sort of people who are speaking as if they represent Islam and Muslims.
I'm not saying they represent Islam. Yeah. I'm saying that he thinks he represents Islam, and that he did that on behalf of his views of religion.
Sure, but if there's a vegetarian who eats hamburgers but says he's a vegetarian, that's not my problem. If I'm a vegetarian.
But do you think he's that misrepresented? No, I think he's a crazy fundamentalist.
Let me make it very straightforward.
Do you think he's that misrepresented?
I'll make it very straightforward. If there is someone who is killing innocent people, and he says this is from Islam, they're wrong. Whoever they are, they're wrong. Now, that's a categorical statement, and I can bring texts from the religious sources themselves to evidence this. Now, the point isn't the point. The point stands. Just because someone is behaving in a certain way, you can't generalize that to a something you're associated with. So I'm not saying this to you in a negative way. So this is part of the Western narrative. So when people of a certain differenceness, so we won't say race, but the different people, if they do something bad, the questions are raised. What's wrong with these people? Why are they behaving in this way? It's generalized. Anything bad is generalized. What's wrong with their culture? They're like this. If someone does something good, they associate it. They don't generalize this. He's such a good person. They almost make it. He's an exception to the rule. conversely, if someone, a Caucasian person from the West, does something wonderful, it's something bad. This is a person with mental illness. Surely you understand that this person something must be wrong with them. We wouldn't accept. There's an assumption that the collective cannot be held accountable for the actions of the individual. So what they do is they generalize for Muslims. We're talking about Muslims here. They generalize the negative and they specify the positive. And when it comes to Caucasians doing the same thing, they specify the negative.
In fairness,
mental health issues, and then they generalize the goodness. So generally, these people are good. There's nothing wrong with them. They have a wonderful culture,
but because
and
of my
they're
background,
not invading
my
loads
race
of countries
changes.
and killing millions of people in the modern age, and holding countries to ransom with their IMF policies, and overthrowing governments all over the world, and taking over natural resources and making African children dig for cobalt so that we can have mobile phones every year. And they're not, this is sort of the problem that we're having. So it would be really useful. It'd be really, really useful if you're going to have a question about the existence of God, a great question, to actually have a good motivation behind, because I think the motivation is important.
I think that is a good motivation. I think I could stretch it out to where we have Christians here who very much specifically bomb abortion clinics because of their religious views. Now you could say they are crazy.
Amy, can an atheist be encouraged to do very bad things?
Yes.
So therefore it's not religion necessarily that motivates. It's just the fact that people can be brainwashed or persuaded to do bad things, right?
Therefore, bad things can happen for other reasons besides religion.
So I would agree with you. So basically now you've made a general comment on people of religion or people outside of religion that can be brainwashed to do bad things, basically.
But with an atheist, when they have someone like a Pol Pot or a Mao, and they end up removing all of the farmers' land and giving it to public property, and everyone dies, it wasn't because they were an atheist, it was because they were stupid. And so when you have these events with religion, a lot of these individuals, when you give arguments, not
but Amy, you just did exactly what I said.
Exactly.
Which is what?
You specified the negative with this individual. He's stupid. He doesn't represent atheism.
Oh no, he represents atheism 100%. It's not about
did he act on? Did he act on the behalf of atheism? Is he representing atheism? Were his actions in killing millions of people because of atheism?
But walk me through this. Did he remove the farmland because of atheism?
No, I'm not interested. What I'm asking you.
That's what I care
about. The bad things he did, whatever you want to do, are they because of atheism?
No, and I'm saying the bad things that many religious people
the point I'm
do
making. This is the point I'm making. I made this point earlier. Exactly the point I made, that for them, you're specifying the negative. Just as they say, when there's an attack somewhere in the West, and they say, the cause is being investigated, 100% this was a non-brown individual who has committed an atrocity, and then later on they'll say, yeah, he was mentally ill. And as soon as they say a terrorist act foiled, or a terrorism shot dead, killing, this person's a brown guy, and they're generalizing this to, everyone.
And I'm not saying
you did the same. You made Pol Pot. Rather than a very smart, horrific guy, very smart, able to control a country, rule over these people and carry out all these horrible things. Someone not stupid by any standard. You said, no, this guy is acting because he's stupid, and that's. I would be honest, respectfully with you. I understand the need for that. So when I see people who say, this guy here, he's advocating blowing up, such and such innocent people, I say, well, this guy's stupid. But that's not what the narrative is, and what you've come with is really the same type of narrative. And I would, you're smarter than that, Amy. We've had conversations before. You know better.
But when people are making those sort of threats, they are more immoral or evil than they are stupid. It's actually a separation. There are leaders that are doing bad who are terrible human beings. And so I don't think that Pol Pot killed people for atheism. I am convinced, because of fundamentalist views, that Osama bin Laden, like many other religious fundamentalists, did those for his religious beliefs.
Okay, I appreciate you're convinced of that, but there's no evidence. And this is, and really, we're sort of going in a bit of a circle. So
not only that, Imran, not only that, but it was.
And I have family night in a minute or two.
Okay,
Imran, wasn't Hitler and some of the experiments that they did, biogenetics and whatever, they felt that they were a superior race. The Aryan race was a superior race to everybody else. And if gypsies, black people, disabled people, Jews, basically, whoever they were, they deserved to die. They were lesser human than they were, right? Now, hold on, Amy. Now, through atheism, you can actually make that argument. Of course you can.
You can't make the use for lesser or subhumans or any of that.
Of course you can. Amy, of course you can. People have. People
in
have
fact,
made that
in
argument.
fact,
I'm sure people have.
Eugenics.
Non-science.
Eugenics was the brainchild of the Darwinian evolutionary model.
Yes.
No, eugenics
it was the different, because what happened was that the idea was that the white people were more evolved than the brown people and the black people, and there was a hierarchy. It was the Caucasians, and then there was the Chinese, and then there were the brown people, and then there were the black people from Africa. And this was in terms of evolutionary pathway, this was what was posited. And this led, and this is one of the reasons, this is one of the justifications why when the West went around colonizing the world and killing people and treating people inhumanly for half a millennia, taking their resources and getting them to sort of dig up gold. And there's a horrific picture you can see online of a father from Africa, an African gentleman, sitting on a side of a flat area, looking at a hand and a foot. And the caption explains that this is a father who's looking at the hand and the foot of his 4-year-old daughter, who had a hand and foot chopped off because he didn't give the right amount of gold to the colonizers who were colonizing his country. Just look at the history of the Congo and what happened there, and which was a country that what's his name? I forgot, the Belgium guy. I forgot his name now. He went I mean, literally annihilated whole countries, and where did this come from? This was a social impact of the Darwinian theory of evolution that led to eugenics.
Yeah,
this is why it was okay. There were some people that thought it was okay to do these to these people. We're civilizing these savages. And a lot of the negativity you see now in the Leopold, that's some brother Morada's put it in there. Yeah.
But eugenics was a pseudoscientific belief system that is not accepted by any mainstream modern science. And
no, but at the time, this is the thing we're talking about at the time. So at the time, the idea was that actually there is even amongst the human beings, there is evolutionary differences.
And was the person making it, did they put themselves on the top? And like the people we dislike, they're like, we're going to put them on the bottom?
Absolutely. People tend to do that when they're the ones enacting the things. But the point is that if we're talking about motivations, is that the motivations is we're trying to weed out the genetic imperfections in human beings to make them the uberhuman, the Ubermensch, to be able to go on and produce the perfect race.
And when you do that, you generally make like the king and queen of England. You generally make inbreeding. No, when you want a good genetic variety, the farther away it's actually
now. Thank God it's become pseudoscience, but at the time it wasn't. And the thing that we have as that's something that was theistically speaking, we're told that every life is valuable. Humans are intrinsically valuable things. If you kill one human being, it's like you killed all of humanity. And if you save one human being, it's like you saved all of humanity. So I have good reasons, because of my theistic beliefs and my religion, to understand and appreciate human beings, whoever they are, and to know that they have a value in the sight of God, and therefore we are all equal in the sight of God. The only difference is in terms of how we are ranked. It would only be known to God, and that would be on our ability to submit to his requirements of us.
And from my evolutionary standpoint, I think all humans are equally 4.5 billion years evolved. The only person that's more slightly evolved than us are our children. That's how population genetics work. But so you are my brothers. I refuse. And before I do have to go, but I'll keep on coming back on. The last thing I want to say, because I will say this, it doesn't matter what sort of attacks or whatever. Nobody should ever be prejudiced towards someone for having religious belief, no matter how spicy I am. These are always breaking bread conversations, and you should follow, and subscribe.
We appreciate you, Amy, and thank you for coming.
And to be honest, Amy, we don't judge atheists when they go and bomb all these countries around the world. Because their ideology is that we're just all animals. We're all just different species, just like the lion basically jumps on the zebra and tears him apart. There's no difference between us. Everything that we set when it comes to value is arbitrary. It's just all matter. It's just all matter. It's all just social consensus. And if I have to bomb your country to steal your resources, guess what? It's absolutely fine. There's no accountability. Who cares?
But a little bit of point there. Most Americans, unfortunately, 60% plus are young earth evangelicals. And so the people bombing do not believe in evolution. I just want to put that out there, unfortunately.
And yet there are 40% of them that do, right?
Yes, or they believe in some sort of mix of theistic evolution. And so, but survival of the fittest doesn't mean you can go out and bomb people. Those are people who I think want people's resources. And
Amy, the point is, people behave badly. People do the most horrendous activities. You can use atheism to justify that because, as I said to you, everything becomes arbitrary. All values become arbitrary. It just becomes a figment of your imagination or your social consensus. There's no other anchor beyond that. So you can justify, quite cleverly, you could justify the going and bombing and stealing somebody else's resources because we're all animals anyway. It's just matter. We're all stardust. It doesn't matter really. Sorry?
It's not moral. They should be called upon that. We should hold our politicians if they voted for that.
Can't use atheism to talk about morality then.
We can't. We can use things like secular humanism, however.
But all of that is simply arbitrary things that you've set.
By a mind.
Yeah, but somebody else's mind could say something very different to your mind, right?
But from my view, there is no one else. When you talk about the eternal arbitrary, the eternal mind, I don't believe that exists, and so it leaves us with just our minds.
Yeah, which is basically, if you believe that, it's fickle. It changes through time, changes through culture, changes through your sensibilities when it comes to nurture, nature, all of these things. It varies. It changes over time. What was immoral 100 years ago, it may be moral today, and vice versa. Many things, as you said, were very moral 100 years ago, 150 years ago. Heinous acts were committed all over the world by people who felt that they were superior because they were evolved more than the people they were killing, the people they were destroying, basically, and stealing from. So you can use atheism. You can use religion and misguide people by misquoting things, by deliberately mistranslating things, and you can trick people into doing horrible things. And just like you would say an atheist is stupid for doing something like that, I would say that somebody who is a theist and does that is equally stupid for doing something like that, because it fundamentally goes against the core teachings of the religion, whereas it doesn't go fundamentally against atheism to go and do bad things, because you can justify it rationally.
If you have 5 things that are making humans do something bad, and religion is one of those 5 things, and you say, well, look, there's 4 other things, so why are you picking on religion? Well, because it's still one of the 5 things, and I also think it's actually a proportionally larger than many of. I think if we were to get rid of theism is a conceptual idea, many more people would be on board with modern science. They would be on board. I think we're getting more moral. I think when we stop using eugenic subspecies like things because we have secular humanistic like properties, we are getting more empathetic, more kind, more fair. I think we are going to continue to do that.
So what's your evidence for that statement? Religion causes more. What's your evidence for that?
No, but that's not even the argument, Amy, you made. We're not saying to you that there are many other things that also say bad things. We're saying to you that Islam specifically, you're talking about Islam, is not one of the things that causes those sort of behaviors. And to argue that, you'd have to bring something from the religion to establish that, yes, this is that. And then if you were to analyze any historical events, you'd have to establish that this was the reason why certain things were carried out. And I don't know how you would do that, because it's not only is it not within the religious texts, none of the historical atrocities you may point to are going to be because of grabbing power or grabbing land, or nothing to do with the actual what the religion is requiring you to do. But I think you had family waiting. I think you were saying that you were so maybe we should let you to get to that.
I'll keep on coming on. Thank you so very much, gentlemen. And I'll say it again. You should all like and subscribe down there. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Amy. Amy, do study the works of Professor Robert Pape and Scott Atram. I think you'll find that very informative.
Shall do.
Thank you for coming on. Okay, I think I was a little bit irritated today. I must apologize if I was. I probably was, actually, because I was on all sorts of tablets and what have you. Anyway, Nazam, any last words before we get the doctor to close the stream, inshallah?
I don't know if it's worth responding to what Rob was saying previously, because I had some other notes as well that I made.
Go on, very quickly. If you can do it quickly, go on.
Yeah, I just wanted to just say in general, like documentary evidence is not like the first sign of the existence of something. So it doesn't mean like it didn't exist before. Like the absence of evidence, as I say, is not evidence for its absence. So like with the story of Adam, he made mention of, even though it may have been mentioned like millions and millions of years after Adam, peace be upon him, in some apocryphal Jewish source, doesn't mean that was the first time in which that story existed, because it could have existed in oral form. It's possible that the story was narrated or came to us through a prophet, that the prophet in his own time may have narrated that particular story to his own particular people in order to make to draw a moral lesson or some eternal truth. And then eventually, it's documented and written, because even like the art of writing and language is something that's developed and haven't been there necessarily at the beginning of human life or human civilization. And just with regards to the book of Daniel, chapter 7, so I agree with Rob. I've not heard of this other view that Jude, so the book of Enoch, that's a reference in the letter of Jude, could have been about something. There's this debate among scholars whether the Son of Man is Enoch or someone else. But be that the case, even if the Son of Man isn't Enoch but someone else, from Daniel chapter 7, from the context, it's clear it's speaking about the nation of Israel or the saints of the Most High. And we know this because of verse, for example, verse 27, which is parallel to verse 14 of that same chapter. And the same type of language is used for the saints of the Most High in that chapter. That's also used for the Son of Man. And also with the Son of Man, I recommend Rob check out Dr. Ali Attai's lecture on the Son of Man on Paul's channel, Blogging Theology, because sometimes when Jesus speaks about the Son of Man, sounds like Jesus is speaking about another Son of Man to come after him in the future, which Dr. Ali Attai, and including myself, I take to be the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And that was basically it. But thanks for the stream. Thanks for inviting me.
Jazakallah khair, Nazam, for that. I mean, one of the things for us as Muslims is that we provide I believe, objective, conclusive evidence about the Qur'an being from a divine source, a miracle from God Almighty, we can provide exceptional evidence beyond doubt that the Qur'an is preserved. Now, if the Qur'an says something being from God, I don't care if 1,000 historians tell me my view of this is X, Y, or Z. Do I take God's word or do I take the historian's word, who is at best unsure about what happened? Has to go back to clay and find things inscribed in clay, and then from that he has to try to assume what punishments they may or may not have had, and because it doesn't seem to suggest that particular punishment was a specific for a particular crime, therefore it couldn't have I mean, we don't go into all this conjecture, guessing nonsense to try to verify whether the Quran is true or not. Our standard is much higher. We verify the Quran being a divine book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if history doesn't report something or it reports it differently, then it's wrong. Then it's wrong. The Quran is not wrong. We don't go into these spurious little stories that we find 3,000 years ago that may or may not be true, or may have some truth in them. And then from that, we somehow judge whether God got it right or whether God got it wrong. We don't do it that way. That's the wrong way round, quite frankly. Dr. Imran.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair, brothers, for being on the stream today. It was an honor to be with you, especially Nazam and not from you, and Nabat as always, mashallah. And thanks to everyone for listening and to your support, and the mods for their great work, mashallah. May Allah increase you all. Anything good is from Allah, and anything that bad or any mistakes is from ourselves. May Allah forgive us for our shortcomings and purify our intention, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Islam. Brothers and sisters, remember Ramadan is literally just a few days away. Inshallah, make the most. I heard a beautiful khutbah at the masjid of one of the Sahaba companions who sees a dream that a Sahabi dies as a martyr and another Sahabi lives for a year longer, and the one who lived a year longer enters paradise first. And so he starts telling the companions, and then the news reaches the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he calls the Sahaba and he questions him, and he says to him, why are you surprised? Didn't he get an extra year of ibadah? Didn't he get an extra Ramadan? So alhamdulillah, Allah has inshallah bestowed us with Ramadan. Make the most of it. May Allah inspire us as well to make the most of it. Read as much Qur'an and have a lot of introspection and on the Qur'an as well. It is the month of the Qur'an. And please remember us all in your dua, in your supplication, that Allah keeps us sincere, that makes things easy for us. Please pray for Brother Ijaz as well, that Allah gives him good health, and his family member as well who's unwell. And of course, all of us as well, that Allah, inshallah, protects us and our families and keeps us on Iman. Jazakallah khair to all the mods, mashallah. And my apologies if I was a bit irritable today. I think I probably was. So my apologies for that. So inshallah, see you guys again soon. I think we're probably going to do streams after Ramadan. But we probably will have some fundraising streams for certain people during Ramadan. So inshallah, we'll see you inshallah after Ramadan. Jazakallah khair to everybody. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.